Natalie Reborn was a young woman of exceptional beauty and kindness. From a young age, she had been compelled to live with her stepmother and stepsister, Fiona. From their very first encounter, her stepmother had completely charmed her. It seemed Natalie had finally found the complete family she had always longed for. However, unexpectedly, she was betrayed by her stepmother and Fiona, who arranged for her to marry a man named Ryan Constance. Natalie's tragedy began there. After the marriage, she discovered Ryan was a lecherous and greedy man. After she asked for a divorce, Ryan brutally murdered her. Everything seemed to end in tragedy, but by some miracle, Natalie was reborn back to a time before it all happened. Now, Natalie was back, stronger than before. She was determined to capture the heart of young Master Eli, whom Fiona was deeply infatuated with. Unfortunately, due to a series of events, she was forced to confess her feelings to Charles Bennox, the most difficult man in the Empire. In this new life, would her path finally blossom, or would it lead to another impasse? Let's continue to watch and wait for the outcome. In a magnificent and grand hall, Duke Charles solemnly announced an extremely important message to everyone present. Today, I wish to announce good news. I intend to propose to Miss Natalie Reborn. Natalie stared at Charles with an expression of surprise. The youngest Duke, Charles Bennox, possessor of the Empire's strongest ice magic, was proposing to her. Her stepmother also couldn't believe what she had just heard. How is this possible? Fiona's heart skipped a beat. Impossible, she murmured. How could it be that wretch? I should be the one marrying him. Hoping to change Charles's mind, Fiona stubbornly approached him and asked, "Your Grace, have you mistaken the name? I am Fiona." "You mean Fiona, right?" Fiona thought she could sway Charles's heart, but she received an icy reply. "Miss Fiona, please behave yourself." Hearing these words, she could only withdraw her hand in anguish. Charles began walking towards Natalie and confirmed again, "The person I like is Miss Natalie. The person I want to marry is also Miss Natalie. I hope you will not say or do anything that could be easily misunderstood." Natalie sorrowfully expressed her feelings to Fiona. "I'm sorry, Fiona, my dear sister. I know you've always liked the Duke and wish to become the Duchess. But feelings cannot be forced. I cannot control my own feelings, so I cannot give the Duke to you." On the surface, Natalie pretended to be gentle and kind, but inwardly, she felt immense joy at seeing Fiona's utter despair. It's so delightful to see their horrified expressions. "Next, I will make you even more desperate. Don't even think about escaping. None of you will get away." Months earlier, on a beautiful day in the Kerstin mansion, Natalie was admiring her breathtakingly beautiful reflection in the mirror. "This face isn't bad. No disfigurement." Bella suddenly entered to report, "Miss, young Master Ryan is here." Natalie pondered something seemingly mysterious. Young Master Ryan? There's still time. She turned and smiled at Bella. All right. In her heart, Natalie also felt relieved. Bella was still alive, not beaten to death for protecting her. More importantly, Natalie had been reborn a year before everything happened. She sat with Ryan and Fiona, chatting. When Ryan took out a small gift, Fiona exclaimed, "My goodness, is this jewelry from the House of Caroline? Young Master Ryan is so good to you, sister." Ryan held the jewelry box and said sincerely, "I just thought this hairpin would suit Miss Natalie very well, so I bought it." Natalie didn't say anything, only smiled meaningfully. Looking at the cheerful atmosphere, could he have guessed something? Fiona, sitting beside them, said excitedly, "Sister, try it on." Natalie suddenly recalled the unpleasant memories of her past life. "In my past life, all my suffering was because of these two people. I am the only daughter of the Earl. My mother passed away when I was 2. For many years, Father took meticulous care of me, but he was very busy, and I often spent my time alone reading. So, Father felt guilty towards me, saying he hadn't given me a happy childhood. Then, when I was 9, Father brought my stepmother to the Earl's estate. My stepmother had a daughter around my age." Her father chuckled softly. "Natalie, now you have a friend." Her stepmother approached unexpectedly and gently stroked her head. "Natalie, from now on, I am your mother." Natalie had a good impression of her from their very first meeting, a gentle and wise stepmother. "Since I was a child, I longed for maternal love, so I quickly accepted this gentle stepmother. When I grew up, my stepmother introduced me to Ryan Constance, the second son of Earl Constance, handsome and charming, and he understood my preferences very well. I thought I had found my destined one. However, this false beauty shattered after the marriage. Less than 2 months after the wedding, my father suddenly passed away. Soon, Ryan began to reveal his true lecherous nature. Natalie witnessed firsthand the scoundrel embracing his new mistress. After experiencing many unacceptable things, she asked Ryan for a divorce. However, he wouldn't let her go easily. Divorce? You wish. If I divorce you, where'll I get money? I'm the Earl's son-in-law now. He became frantic, yelling, I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget. Wine bottles and glasses began to shatter on the floor as if they were out of control. Ryan pinned Natalie to the ground, ruthlessly beating her again and again. Once, when I mentioned divorce, he hit me with a wine bottle and killed me. Ryan snarled at her. You still want a divorce? I'll make you leave this world. You wretch. Just the two of you women, and you dare to play me. Natalie could only clench her fists helplessly. It was then that I realized that Ryan approaching me was the idea of my stepmother and stepsister. Their purpose was to prevent me from seeing the person my father had chosen for me, and my father was harmed by my stepmother. Now is the time when Ryan bribed Fiona and her mother to pursue me. This hairpin must have been bought by Fiona according to her own preferences and then given to Ryan to please me. Natalie pretended to praise. It's beautiful. I really like it. Thank you, young Master Ryan. However, I don't have matching earrings and a necklace. It would be wonderful if I could wear a complete set of jewelry to the Marchioness's banquet. It turned out she had already planned how to deal with them. If that's the case, then I want more. Do you agree? Faced with Natalie's unexpected request, Ryan panicked. Fiona, sitting next to him, immediately came to his rescue. I also think you would look better wearing a complete set, sister. Young Master Ryan, what do you think? He echoed, Yes, that was my oversight. I will definitely make sure Miss Natalie wears a full set of jewelry before the banquet. Natalie feigned excitement and asked, Really? Thank you, young Master Ryan. He forced a smile and replied, You're welcome, as long as Miss Natalie is happy. In Natalie's private room, her maid, Bella, said, Miss Fiona's maid bought jewelry from the house of Caroline and secretly gave it to young Master Ryan's servant. Natalie wasn't surprised at all. She calmly continued reading, thinking, just as I suspected. A few seconds later, she said to Bella, All right, I understand. Bella asked in surprise, Miss, why would Fiona do such a thing? Natalie calmly replied, Why? Naturally, it's because of everything in the Earl's estate. Natalie made up her mind. I was too foolish in my past life, but after being reborn, I will absolutely not give them another chance to hurt me and my father. The next day, Bella continued to brief Natalie on the situation so that she could stay informed. Miss, I found out that young Master Eli will be attending the mass ball birthday party hosted by Grand Duchess Angelina. Natalie nodded and asked, Has our family received an invitation? Bella quickly replied, Yes, but ever since you entered society at the age of 16, Madame has claimed to be unwell every time such a banquet occurs, and she insists on staying home to care for Madame. So it was always Miss Fiona who accompanied the Earl to these events before. Bella earnestly warned Natalie, Don't be fooled by Madame this time. How could it be such a coincidence? Natalie's gaze drifted, fixed on some distant point as she confided in Bella, It won't happen again. You warned me in my past life, but I craved a mother's love so desperately, and my stepmother's act was so convincing. I never suspected a thing. Bella's voice was hushed as she inquired, By the way, miss, why did you ask me to inquire about young Master Eli? A knowing smile played on Natalie's lips. Because I intend to steal Eli from Fiona. Bella gasped, her eyes wide with surprise. What? A steely resolve hardened Natalie's features. From now on, nothing of mine will go to Fiona. Anything she wants, I will take. Fiona has always planned to use our Earl's house as a stepping stone to marry young Master Eli of the Duke's house. But I absolutely will not let her have her way. In this life, she can marry that scoundrel Ryan. Bella jumped with delight. Wonderful, miss. You've finally seen through those two. Natalie continued, giving her instructions. Go and tell my mother that my grandmother has sent a letter asking me to visit her for 2 days. Bella immediately agreed. Yes, that way Madame won't be able to feign illness and keep you home. To wait on her, Natalie sat quietly, lost in thought. Right now, I'm busy helping my father host guests for His Majesty, so I don't want him to worry about me. I don't want to play the part of the loving daughter with her, so avoiding her is the best option. In my past life, I trusted her, loved her so much, yet she schemed against me, leaving me with such a tragic end. Now, if I see her face, I'm afraid I won't be able to resist tearing her apart. 3 days later, the day of the banquet arrived. The national goddess of the Sarah continent, including the bright god of the Hazel Empire, However, for centuries, the internal power struggles within the church have led to a decline in its influence, gradually reducing it to a tool of power in the hands of the royal family, existing solely by their grace. Therefore, the aristocratic banquet celebrating the birthday of the goddess of light is not managed by the church, but is orchestrated entirely by the royal family. In the ballroom, Miss Cariston took the initiative to greet Eli. "Young Master Eli, it's been a while." He responded warmly. "Hello, Miss Cariston." Natalie stood back, feeling a surge of nervousness. Eli, the most favored young master of the Bennington dukedom. According to the information I've gathered, he has a bright and enthusiastic personality, easy to approach. Although he's amiable, he's never done anything excessive. But how should I approach him without seeming too deliberate? However, my current goal is to prevent Fiona from successfully marrying Eli. Actually, I only need to ruin Eli's impression of Fiona. I don't need to involve myself directly. It's a blessing that Fiona was schemed against and couldn't attend the banquet. I hope this is the best thing that happens today. With her quick wit, Natalie soon devised a plan. "I've got it. I'll confess to Eli, pretending to be Fiona. When he rejects me, I'll pretend to go mad and act out of line. With his personality, he won't hold it against me, but Fiona's name will definitely be blacklisted." The thought filled Natalie with a thrill of anticipation. Upstairs, Grand Duchess Angelica was conversing with Charles. "Your nephew is truly outstanding, worthy of being the Empire's most sought-after young master. I wonder which young lady has been watching him so intently." Hearing Angelica's words, Charles's curiosity was piqued, and he glanced down. Among the dozens of guests, a young lady stood at the back, her gaze fixed on Eli, but she made no move to approach him. That person was Natalie. She had caught Charles's attention. Eli smiled at the young ladies surrounding him. "Ladies, if you'll excuse me." Natalie, observing his every move, thought, "He's leaving. My chance." Taking advantage of a passing waiter, Natalie reached out and grabbed a bottle of wine. Using wine as a greeting should seem natural, right? After taking a few steps, she suddenly realized, how did I get so nervous that I took the entire bottle? Oh well, with the mask, no one will recognize me. Upstairs, Charles excused himself from Angelica. "Your Highness, I must take my leave." She nodded with a smile. "Very well, you may go." Natalie slowly said Eli. "I should have worn a full face mask. I wonder if I'll be recognized like this. What should I do with this bottle of wine? I can't just ask him if he wants to drink with me, can I?" Suddenly, a hand appeared out of nowhere, gripping Natalie's wrist. She turned around in alarm. Charles's face was etched with suspicion. "What are you trying to do?" he demanded. Natalie struggled to maintain her composure. "I'm not trying to do anything," she replied, her heart pounding with fear. "Did he see through my plan?" Eli turned around as well. "Uncle, what's wrong?" he asked. Natalie's shock deepened. "Uncle, isn't this man Duke Bennox?" Charles recounted the events. "This person was following you suspiciously with a bottle of wine. I was afraid she might do something to harm you." "I didn't," Natalie denied. "That's absurd. Who would openly attack young Master Eli in a place like this? It's the Duke who's dangerous for even thinking that." Eli offered a kind smile. "Uncle, let her go. I believe this young lady wouldn't do such a thing. Don't worry." He turned to Natalie. "Could you explain the wine and why you were following me?" Natalie thought, young Master Eli is truly gentle with women. Panicked, she blurted out, "Because I wanted to confess my feelings. I wanted to drink some wine for courage." She inwardly congratulated herself on her quick thinking. "If I said I was too nervous and grabbed the wrong thing, no one would believe me." Charles stood firm. "Prove you're not an assassin. Remove your mask." Natalie froze, caught in a dilemma. "Then everyone will know I confessed to young Master Eli." She countered bravely. "Can I refuse? I only dared to confess because of this masquerade ball." Eli came to her defense. "Uncle, young ladies are easily embarrassed. Please don't make things difficult for her." Natalie felt a wave of relief. Young Master Eli is such a gentleman. I can't cause him any more trouble. Charles, on the other hand, was not so accommodating. No wonder he's listed as both the most charming and the most unapproachable man in the Empire. He raised his voice, addressing Natalie. "Fee?" Natalie smirked inwardly, a new plan forming. "If you're going to force me, then don't blame me for dragging you down with me." Taking a deep breath, she slowly removed her mask. With a serious expression, she addressed Charles directly. "Although it's difficult to say, I want to tell you, Duke Bennox, I admire you. Eli's eyes twinkled with amusement. Uncle, it seems this young lady was confessing to you. Finally, a woman who admires you. Charles glared at Eli, who promptly fell silent. Continuing her performance, Natalie said, "If I was too forward, I apologize. I originally intended to ask young Master Eli to arrange a private meeting with you. You said I could speak my mind, and you wouldn't blame me, right?" She thought, "Seeing his displeased expression makes me so happy. Being reckless once in a while is quite fun. I was too reserved before, and it only hurt me. In my past life, after I discovered Ryan's true nature, I should have gone directly to my grandfather and used his authority to force a divorce." Charles glanced impassively at Natalie, thinking to himself, "Crazy woman." Charles glanced impassively at Natalie, a single thought echoing in his mind, "Mad woman." The masked Eli engaged Natalie in cheerful conversation. "I don't know which family's young lady you are. Have we met before?" Making the situation even more surreal, Charles Ben Knox stood beside him. Worry gnawed at her, a flurry of thoughts racing through her mind. "They don't know who I am. If I run away now, wouldn't that mean no one will know I confessed to Ben Knox?" A flicker of recognition crossed Eli's face. "I remember now. You're Natalie, aren't you?" he exclaimed, a touch of excitement in his voice. "Yes, have we met before, young Master Eli?" she replied with a smile, her heart pounding. "It seems I can't escape. I haven't appeared at any social gatherings since my 16th birthday party. Even if young Master Eli saw me then, he probably doesn't remember me now." Eli beamed, a hint of pride in his voice. "Your father showed me your picture." Natalie lowered her head, a mixture of shyness and apprehension washing over her. "Why would my father—" she stammered, unable to finish her sentence. Suddenly it clicked. No wonder Fiona and her mother conspired against me, marrying me off so early. They had their eyes on the person my father chose for me. Eli placed a hand sincerely over his heart. "Indeed," he said softly, "I am the one your father chose for you. However, if he knew you like my uncle, he probably wouldn't have chosen me." His gaze remained fixed on Natalie. Meanwhile, Ben Knox leaned in and whispered, "Why aren't you saying anything? Did someone tell you to play mute? She's the one Eli fancies." Benix's heart sank. He pressed her further. "Are you sure you like me? It's not too late to change your mind." "You don't need to feel awkward," Natalie replied. "I don't need you to accept my feelings." Inwardly, she pleaded, "Someone, please save me. This feels like an interrogation." Ben Knox addressed them both. "In that case, let's pretend nothing happened. You don't need to worry about anyone finding out, Mississippi." He turned to Eli, adding pointedly, "Don't mention this to anyone when you return." Eli scratched his head, flustered. "Don't be afraid, Mississippi. My uncle is just not good with women. He doesn't mean any harm." "I won't," Natalie assured him. "I don't mind. Ele playful levinkit. Don't worry. I'll help you pursue my uncle." Natalie quickly waved her hands. "No, there's no need to trouble yourself, young master." But Eli insisted. "Don't be so polite. This is something our entire family has been hoping for." Secretly, he thought, "It's not easy to find a girl who confesses to my uncle. I need to tell my grandfather this good news." Then, turning to Natalie, he said, "I'll take my leave then." "Wait for my good news. Mississippi, leave it to me." Natalie was speechless at his enthusiasm. All she could think was, "I don't need your help. I don't want to pursue him." She sighed inwardly. Young Master Eli is too enthusiastic. It's overwhelming. "Oh well, I'll just take things as they come. Fiona must be home by now, cursing me, I imagine. I wonder if she likes the gift I gave her." The scene shifted to a lavish palace. Fiona burst in, drenched in sweat. "Mother!" she cried. Her mother, startled by her daughter's state, asked worriedly, "Heavens, dear, what happened? Shouldn't you be at the birthday banquet?" Fiona recounted the sudden breakdown of her carriage. Her mother took Fiona's hand. "Oh dear, are you hurt?" Fiona replied angrily. "I'm fine, but I ran into a beggar who stole my food and dirted my clothes. Damn commoners. I was planning to use this banquet to get close to young Master Eli." Her mother soothed her. "It's good that you're all right. Don't be angry. Let's go change your clothes. There will be plenty of other opportunities to get close to young Master Eli." Fiona followed her mother's advice and went to bathe, attended by 3 maids. One maid, despite her gentle efforts, struggled to please Fiona while combing her hair, her nervousness evident. Fiona glared at her, annoyance flashing in her eyes. Seeing the young lady's gaze, the maid broke out in a cold sweat. "I'm sorry, miss," she stammered, falling to her knees. "Please forgive me, Mrs. Sippy." Fiona's face hardened. "Come here," she commanded fiercely. Luckily, Fiona's mother arrived just in time. She addressed the maid kindly. "Get up. It's nothing serious. The miss won't do anything to you. She's not that harsh. You may all leave." Upon hearing their mistress's words, the maids quickly filed out. Fiona's mother then began combing her hair herself, offering counsel. "You still need to learn patience. She's just a maid. If she displeases you, dismiss her. But if her actions damage your reputation, that will be problematic." Fiona remained fuming. "But I had such terrible luck today. I need to vent my frustration." Her mother continued to reason with her calmly. "Be patient. If word gets out that you're harsh to the servants, it will affect your chances of marrying into the Duke Bennett's family. To marry into the dukedom, you cannot have any blemishes on your reputation. My precious daughter will certainly marry into the dukedom." Suddenly, someone announced, "Madam, the eldest miss has returned." Fiona and her mother hurried out to greet Natalie. "Natalie, you're back," her mother said, feigning warmth. Then, her eyes widened, landing on the dark-clad figures behind Natalie. "Who are these people?" Fiona's mother asked, her brow furrowing. Natalie explained smoothly, "They're from my grandfather's estate. I was so taken with the pastry chef's desserts that I brought her back with me." "And the guards?" "Grandfather insisted on them, worried for my safety." Fiona's mother offered a thin smile. "My dear girl, what danger could possibly befall you at home?" Natalie returned the smile. "I said the same thing, but grandfather wouldn't hear of it." Inwardly, however, she was taking precautions against any further machination from the scheming mother and daughter. Suddenly, her father returned home. "What's all this?" he asked, surprised by the gathering in the entryway. "Father," Natalie cried. Tears welled in her eyes as she spoke. "You're well," she choked out, the words laced with emotion. Her father, instantly alarmed, rushed to her side. "Good heavens, why are you crying? Has someone been bullying my precious daughter?" Fiona's mother chimed in, feigning concern. "Goodness, Natalie, what's wrong?" Her father pressed her further, his voice thick with worry. "Why are you crying? Were you bullied? Who did it? Tell me, and I won't spare them." A wave of sadness washed over Natalie. She longed to expose the venomous pair to her father, but the woman was his wife, after all. Without concrete proof, her accusations would likely only cause him distress. Her stepmother, with a saccharine smile, urged her on. "Tell your father who bullied you. He certainly won't let them get away with it." Her thoughts, however, were far from gentle. "This wretched girl, why the sudden tears? Don't let anyone think I'm the one bullying her." Natalie, clinging tightly to her father, finally spoke. "It's nothing, father. I just missed you so much. It's so good to be able to hug you like this again." Her father stroked her hair gently. "Silly child, crying like a kitten. You miss me this much after only a few days? It seems I'll have to take my little kitten with me wherever I go from now on." Leaning against her father's shoulder, Natalie thought, not a few days, father, but 107 days of a past life. "It's been over 3 months since you were murdered." Composing herself, she brightened. "All right, then I'll follow you wherever you go." A steely resolve hardened within her. This time, she wouldn't let anyone harm him. Her father nodded, pleased. "Good. Did you have a good time at your grandfather's? How is his health?" "Grandfather is in excellent health," Natalie replied. "I had a wonderful time, but I missed you. Oh, by the way, I brought some people back with me from grandfather's. A pastry chef. Her cakes are simply divine, and a few guards. Grandfather insisted they accompany me for protection." Her father chuckled. "It seems this pastry chef's skills are quite impressive, enough to win over our Natalie." He then addressed the newcomers. "Take good care of Miss Natalie. Your treatment here will be no less than what you received at the Marquis's estate." Her stepmother added, "The Earl cherishes Natalie dearly. You must attend to her every need." Natalie turned to her father. "Father, would you like to sample the pastry chef's creations now?" Observing the affectionate exchange between father and daughter, Fiona seethed with resentment. If only the Earl were my true father, she thought venomously. Or, if Natalie were to disappear, would he treat me as his own then? The scene shifted to the Sun Palace. The sound of shattering glass echoed from the princess's chambers. Large jewels lay scattered across the floor. A maid knelt, trembling, her forehead pressed against the ground. "Are you saying," the princess asked, her voice laced with cruelty, "that someone confessed their love to the Duke at my aunt's banquet?" "Why, yes, your highness," the maid stammered. The princess's voice sharpened. "Who?" The maid, her fear intensifying, replied, the daughter of Earl Carriston. The princess was taken aback. Oh, the daughter of a mere earl dares to set her sights on Charles. She then turned back to the maid, her voice dripping with disdain. Do I need to teach you what to do? The next day, Natalie sat reading the newspaper, her heart heavy with apprehension. She worried that her actions the previous night might have offended Duke Bennox by leading those present at the banquet to connect her declaration of love with him. But what was this? Her classmate, noticing her pale face, asked with concern, Miss, what's wrong? You look quite unwell. Are you all right? Natalie handed a document to her maid. This says that women who get close to the Duke, like him, don't end well. Disfigurement, she continued, her voice dropping, assault or marriage to something inhuman. And I confessed to him last night. The maid gasped, the document fluttering to the floor. Her face drained of color. What do we do, miss? Are you in danger? A knock echoed through the room. An invitation from the Bennox dukedom has arrived, a servant announced from beyond the door. Panic flared in the maid's eyes. Miss, what should we do? She pressed, wringing her hands. Is the Duke going to harm you? She asked, her voice trembling with fear. Natalie stared blankly, unsure how to respond. I'll go and see. He's an intelligent man. If he were going to act, he wouldn't do it at the dukedom. Natalie resolved to go to the Bennox dukedom. She had to understand what was happening. Standing before the imposing gates, she whispered to herself, It's all right, Natalie. You'll be all right. Charles Bennox watched her from a window, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. What is that woman doing here? He wondered. Inside the mansion, servants whispered amongst themselves. The old Duke has arrived. Just then, Eli, the Duke's nephew, rushed in, his face alight with excitement. Miss Carriston is here. Quickly, invite her in. A flurry of maidservants from the Bennox dukedom greeted Natalie warmly. Miss Carriston, please follow me. Natalie followed willingly, thinking, as expected of the dukedom, I'm just an earl's daughter, yet I have 2 maids attending me. She touched her chin thoughtfully. But why would Duke Bennox invite me here? Such a formal invitation. It can't just be to make things difficult for me, can it? Her eyes widened as she saw the Duke himself. Duke Bennox approached, passing between 2 rows of servants, their gazes filled with respect. He turned his attention to Natalie, and she wondered if he had been waiting for her. Duke Bennox, good day, she greeted him. His voice was cool. She's looking for me. Natalie was taken aback. Didn't you invite me? He turned to the maids. What's going on? The maid started, then one spoke. The old Duke invited Miss Carriston. He's waiting in the drawing room. Bennox's face darkened, barely suppressing his anger. That damned Eli. Betray me the moment my back is turned. Natalie, utterly bewildered, lowered her head, not daring to meet his gaze. Glancing up at him briefly, she realized Eli must have told the old Duke about her confession. Now that the old Duke knew of her existence, surely Duke Bennox wouldn't harm her. Whether he was behind the previous attacks, however, remained uncertain. Silence hung heavy between them. Bennox turned. Let's go, he said, startling Natalie. He strode ahead, his demeanor aloof. I'll take you. Embarrassment flooded Natalie. Thank you, Your Grace. They proceeded to meet Bennox's father. Father, Bennox announced, I've brought Miss Carriston. Natalie froze. These were all members of the Bennox family. Wasn't this a bit much? Bennox's father stroked his beard. This child is quite thoughtful, escorting her personally. What a beautiful misunderstanding, Natalie thought wryly. Aloud, she greeted him respectfully. Good day, old Duke. Bennox's father beamed. What a fine young lady. Don't be so formal. Have a seat. Charles, you two. Eli scratched his head sheepishly. A good day, uncle. Both Natalie and Bennox stared at Eli, whose face was etched with regret. The situation had escalated into a full-blown family meeting. The Duke's father chuckled. Well, you two look quite well-suited. Bennox's relatives erupted in delighted laughter. A match made in heaven. Truly a handsome couple. His sister-in-law chimed in. Now, father, you needn't worry about Charles's marriage any longer. The family members began introducing themselves. I'm Charles's elder brother. You can call me Big Brother, just like Charles does. She politely returned the greeting. Another woman spoke up. I'm his sister-in-law. May I call you Natalie? The young countess readily agreed. Of course, please feel free. Suddenly, the old Duke boomed. So, when are you two planning to get married? Charles spoke up, his voice sharp. Father, there's nothing between us. Natalie was stunned, unsure how to interject into this whirlwind of situation. The old Duke's face darkened, silencing the room with a glare. Charles's elder brother intervened. Father, you're frightening Natalie. His wife added, Yes, Let the young people handle their own affairs. Why are you so concerned? The old Duke relented slightly. Miss Carriston, please don't feel pressured. I'm not rushing you. Whenever you decide to marry is fine with me. Inwardly, however, he fretted. This confirmed bachelor, Charles, finally had a decent young woman interested in him, and he couldn't bear the thought of her being scared off. He addressed the younger generation. I'm only concerned because Charles is getting older, and I worry about his marriage prospects. At this, Natalie realized the old Duke held her in high regard. More importantly, Duke Bennox hadn't contradicted his father, suggesting he valued his opinion. The old Duke, then, would be a valuable shield against the unfortunate fates that befell other women who approached Charles. As for Charles Bennox himself, he sat with his head lowered, a picture of morose silence. Natalie spoke earnestly. I understand your feelings, old Duke. I admire Duke Bennox, and naturally, I hope for a positive outcome. Please rest assured, I will spend more time with him and strive to win his affections quickly. She knew that if she pleased the old Duke, Charles wouldn't dare defy him and harm her. Please forgive any future transgressions. I hope to have the opportunity to get to know Duke Bennox better. Charles Bennox glanced at her, thinking that calling her a madwoman wasn't far off the mark. Not only mad, but also a skilled actress. The old Duke beamed. Good. Spend some time together. I'm very fond of Natalie and hope she'll become a part of our family soon. Natalie expressed her gratitude. Thank you for your kindness, old Duke. I, too, hope to become a part of your family. Without the old Duke's protection, a mere countess's daughter, like herself, wouldn't stand a chance against the Duke. Charles turned, about to address his father, but thought better of it. His father wouldn't care about his objections anyway. If he wanted to sever this connection, the key lay with the woman beside him. Before Natalie could leave, the old Duke presented her with a gift. Miss Carriston, this is a small token of our meeting. I hope you like it. Seeing the lavish gift box, Natalie politely declined. Thank you, old Duke, but this is too much. I can't accept it, the old Duke insisted, reminding her that it was improper to refuse a gift from an elder. Just accept it, child, he said. With that, Natalie accepted the gift. The old Duke was delighted. Come visit the dukedom whenever you're free. I'll tell Charles to take good care of you. Certainly, Natalie replied. I'll take my leave now. I wish you good health, old Duke. Charles spoke coolly. Come, I'll escort you home. Natalie looked at him in surprise. He was escorting her again. As if to reassure her, the old Duke added, This boy is a bit reserved. Life with him might be a little quiet. Natalie blushed. Not at all. Eli quipped, Aunt, I offended my uncle to help you, so you have to protect me in the future. Natalie laughed lightly. Young Master Eli, you're quite the joker. Hearing Eli call her aunt, Natalie's thoughts raced. Aunt, if I actually marry Charles, I'll be the Duchess. Then, my stepmother and Fiona won't have another chance to harm my father or me. But first, she thought grimly, I have to survive this demon. On the way back to her home, Charles stared intently at Natalie, making her increasingly uneasy. What should I do? He looks like he's about to kill me. Suddenly, Charles spoke, startling her. Countess Carriston, he said, his voice low, find an opportunity to tell my father you already have someone you're interested in. Natalie's eyes widened in astonishment. What? You can't like me. Tell my father you don't like me anymore. Hearing this, Natalie closed her eyes, thinking, as expected, Charles truly loathes being liked or approached by women. But I refuse to die at your hands, she thought fiercely. I need the old Duke as my shield. Opening her eyes, she said, But I do like you. Why should I lie to the old Duke and say I like someone else? Charles retorted. Weren't you the one who said yesterday that you didn't need me to reciprocate your feelings? Why are you now forcing my father to believe? I like you. Natalie explained. I said that because I felt I wasn't worthy of you. But today, I've decided to follow my heart. I like you, and I want to be your wife. Of course, she added, her voice taking on a subtle edge, I also want to be the daughter-in-law the old Duke approves of. Charles froze. Be my wife. I'm afraid you'll lose your life before you even get the chance. Natalie assumed he was merely threatening her. He's threatening me. He's definitely threatening me. What do you mean? She stammered, feigning confusion. I mean, those who like me don't meet a good end. So, you'd best sever ties with me as soon as possible. Natalie pressed him. So, if I sever ties now, will I be safe? She reasoned that if breaking things off guaranteed her safety, she certainly wouldn't risk becoming the Duchess. At her question, Charles fell into a heavy silence. That woman in the palace probably already knows, he thought. She's in danger now. Natalie watched him, fear creeping into her heart. He's silent. Even if I break things off now, I'll still be targeted. She decided to gamble. There was danger either way. I refuse. Finally, they arrived at her home. Stepping out of the carriage, Natalie addressed Charles. In any case, I like you. If you're dissatisfied, tell the old Duke yourself. You're a busy man, so I won't invite you in. Safe travels. With that, she turned and entered the house. If he truly is the one who harmed those girls, then all I can do is remind him that the old Duke is very pleased with his future daughter-in-law. Hopefully, he'll give the old Duke face and leave me alone. Charles watched her go. So be it, he thought. The Duke's protection is better than facing that person. As soon as Natalie stepped inside, a maid rushed towards her. "Miss Natalie," she exclaimed. "What is it?" Natalie asked immediately. The maid whispered in her ear, "Young Master Ryan is here." Natalie clenched her fists. How annoying. What does he want now? Upon entering the drawing room, Natalie found Ryan on his knees. "Miss Natalie," he declared, "I have long admired you. I hope you will accept my feelings." Natalie feigned surprise. "Goodness, young Master Ryan, are you confessing your feelings for me?" As expected, my stepmother, upon hearing I was invited to the Bennox dukedom, has sent this person to interfere. Suddenly, Fiona and her mother appeared. Fiona put on a show of sincerity. "Sister, I'm so envious of you. Young Master Ryan is so good to you. Look, he even confessed and brought so many exquisite gifts, all things you love. This time, I'll indulge them." Natalie thought, a glint in her eye. Give him a little hope, then slowly crush it. Her stepmother chimed in, her voice saccharine. "Natalie, young Master Ryan is the son of Earl Constance. He has a noble background and is a reliable man. You'll be very happy married to him." Natalie gazed at Ryan with feigned affection. "Actually, I admire young Master Ryan very much as well." Ryan responded excitedly. "So, does that mean you accept?" Natalie continued. "However, my father told me not to accept a man's proposal lightly. I need some time to test the sincerity of your feelings. Young Master Ryan, surely you understand my concerns?" Ryan stammered. Seeing him speechless, his mother interjected. "Of course, young Master Ryan understands and is willing to accept your test." Ryan nodded vigorously. Yes. Natalie, any test you wish." Natalie shyly praised him. "Young Master Ryan, you're so kind to reciprocate my feelings. I accept your flowers and gifts, but I hope you'll continue to work hard and not disappoint me." Ryan immediately replied, "I absolutely won't give up." With the matter seemingly settled, Natalie gathered the flowers and gifts and headed towards her room. "Then I'll excuse myself to rest. I'll look forward to our next meeting." Ryan and Fiona stared blankly as Natalie left the room. As soon as she was gone, they erupted into an argument. "How could you be so stupid?" Fiona raged. "I specifically chose a time when father wasn't home for you to confess, afraid he'd interfere. And you couldn't even seal the deal before handing over all those gifts. Mother and I paid for those ourselves, you know?" Ryan retorted. "How was I supposed to know she'd suddenly change her tune? She used to be so easy to please." Fiona's mother roared, "Enough. Stop arguing." Natalie didn't completely refuse. She's loved books since she was a child. Find some rare, ancient texts and give them to her. That'll definitely improve your chances. Unbeknownst to them, Natalie hadn't returned to her room. She had heard every word. The bookstore buzzed with activity, a constant flow of people browsing the shelves. Natalie, arm in arm with her father, Earl Carriston, said, "Father, thank you for coming with me to buy books." She had brought him here deliberately. Fiona had sent her maid to this very bookstore today, and Natalie wanted her father to witness a meeting between Fiona and Ryan, hoping he would then encourage a match between them. Suddenly, Natalie spotted an intriguing book. She reached for it, but someone else snatched it up first. Natalie turned to see Charles. "Don't bother looking," the shopkeeper said cheerfully. "Thank you for your patronage." Natalie hadn't expected to run into Charles here. It seemed another performance was required. She and her father approached Charles, who was paying for his purchase. "Good afternoon, Your Grace," she said. "This isn't a suitable place for you," Charles said immediately. "Go home." He worried for her safety in such a crowded place, without guards. It was the perfect opportunity for that person to strike. Natalie smiled. "I've missed you terribly since we parted yesterday, Your Grace. Now that we've met by such a fortunate coincidence, how could I bear to leave so readily? Besides," she added, "I'm quite interested in the book you have there. I'd love to read it with you." Her tone made Charles wonder if she had become addicted to acting. He turned to Earl Carriston. You must have heard the rumors about me. If you don't want your daughter in danger, take her home immediately. Thank you for your concern, Your Grace, Earl Carriston replied, wiping his brow with a handkerchief. Indeed, I must keep Natalie away from this gentleman. I heard she confessed her feelings to him at the Christmas Eve banquet. I've had nightmares about it for weeks. We'll leave at once. Natalie, her eyes fixed on the book, said with a sparkle in her eye, I apologize for my rudeness, Your Grace. I won't bother you any further. However, I truly adore that book. Once I have the old Duke's permission, I shall ask to borrow it from you. Listening to her, Charles thought she was a true opportunist. Her relentless pursuit would only further provoke that person. I'm not sure I can protect her from them, he thought grimly. Please excuse us, Your Grace, Natalie said, forcing herself to take her leave. We'll be going now. Once outside the bookstore, Natalie purposefully steered her father down a shortcut, a route that would allow them to see Fiona's maid meeting with Ryan. Father, let's go back this way, she suggested. I heard there's a quicker route. He readily agreed. All right, anything you say. As they passed a wall, Earl Carriston overheard a voice. These are the books Miss Fiona asked me to buy for you. Ryan took the books. Don't worry, I won't disappoint Miss Fiona this time. Earl Carriston stopped, lowering his voice. Isn't that Fiona's personal maid? Why is she buying books for young Master Ryan? Natalie replied, perhaps my sister has taken a liking to young Master Ryan and asked Daisy to buy these books for him. She tugged on her father's arm. Let's go quickly, father. It would be awkward if they saw us. Father, she continued, you must find a way to encourage them. I want my sister to be happy. All right, he agreed. I'll think of something when we get home. As Natalie and Earl Carriston chatted amiably, a figure dressed in black appeared, brushing past Natalie. The figure drew a knife, intending to harm Natalie. Someone grabbed Natalie's hand. Your Grace, Natalie said. What are you doing here? She watched as Charles attacked the figure with ice magic. Natalie watched in awe as Charles subdued the attacker. Such powerful ice magic. No wonder he had surpassed his two older brothers to inherit the dukedom. Earl Carriston rushed to his daughter's side, his voice laced with anxiety. Natalie, are you all right? I'm fine, father. Natalie quickly reassured him. A servant hurried over, his face etched with guilt. I apologize, Miss Natalie. We failed to protect you. We didn't stop the assassin in time. Natalie shook her head. It's all right. Thankfully, His Grace was here to save me. A flicker of puzzlement crossed her features. Why would he save me? She wondered. Could there be more to those dreadful rumors about him? Stepping forward, Natalie offered her gratitude to Charles. Thank you for saving me, Your Grace. Are you injured? Charles's gaze was serious as he looked directly at her. Instead of worrying about me, you should worry about yourself. Since you can't even protect yourself, I advise you to stop deluding yourself into thinking you're worthy of approaching me. A flash of annoyance prickled at Natalie, but she quickly reminded herself that if it weren't for Charles, she might be seriously injured. Ignoring his harsh words, she opted for a more disarming approach, feigning a sweet innocence. But you're here, Your Grace. I believe someone as powerful as you can certainly protect me. Charles turned to his men, his voice crisp. Take him away and interrogate him thoroughly. Earl Carriston spoke, his voice still trembling with residual fear. Thank you for saving my daughter, Your Grace. But that assassin... To reassure him, Charles replied calmly, Don't worry, Earl Carriston. Leave this matter to me. Both Natalie and her father expressed their gratitude once more. We'll leave it in your capable hands, Your Grace. Thank you. Suddenly, Natalie heard approaching footsteps. Looking up, she saw Princess Amelia. What a coincidence, the princess exclaimed. I just left the palace to buy some books, and here I find you. It seems we're fated to meet. As Natalie observed the princess's affectionate gaze directed at Charles, a thought crossed her mind. Does Princess Amelia like Charles? The princess turned, a delicate blush coloring her cheeks. Isn't this Earl Carriston? She asked. And who is this beside you? The Earl replied, Your Highness, this is my daughter, Natalie. Natalie performed a graceful curtsy. Good afternoon, Your Highness, Princess Amelia. The princess offered a warm smile. There's no need for such formality. I saw some commotion earlier. I didn't expect to witness an assassination attempt in broad daylight. It was quite dangerous just now. Thankfully, Charles intervened in time, otherwise you might have been injured, Miss Carriston. Charles spoke, his voice even. Protecting the citizens is my duty. Princess Amelia turned her attention back to Natalie. Miss Carriston, were you frightened? Natalie replied, thank you for your concern, Your Highness. I'm quite all right. The princess continued, her tone laced with concern. Such a thing is truly dreadful. You must be careful in the future. If something were to happen to you, Earl Carriston would be heartbroken. Natalie wasn't sure if she was mistaken, but she sensed a hint of malice in the princess's words. Pushing the feeling aside for the moment, she responded politely, thank you for your concern, Your Highness. Wishing to avoid further provoking Princess Amelia, Charles stepped forward and clarified his relationship with Natalie. Your Highness, he stated clearly, while there are no romantic feelings between myself and Miss Carriston, she is the future mistress of the Ben-Knox dukedom, chosen by my father. Her safety is the responsibility of the Ben-Knox dukedom. Anyone who dares to harm her is an enemy of the Ben-Knox dukedom. He invoked the name of the dukedom as both a hint and a warning, hoping it would restrain Princess Amelia. My father holds the esteem of His Majesty. The consequences of opposing the Ben-Knox dukedom are something even Grand Duke Angela must consider carefully. Princess Amelia let out a light laugh. Is that so? When did the old duke choose her as his daughter-in-law? Charles, unwilling to answer her question, offered an excuse. That is none of Your Highness's concern. I must escort them home now. Please excuse us. Very well, the princess replied. I won't delay you any further. Natalie sighed inwardly. Charles clearly doesn't want me to interact with the princess. I wonder why. As soon as they were gone, Princess Amelia's composure shattered. That damned woman, she raged, using such despicable methods to compete with me for Charles. I'll tear her to shreds. Please calm down, Your Highness, her attendant pleaded. The old duke is not someone to be trifled with. Princess Amelia's fury remained undimmed. You must not let her near Charles again, she commanded her attendant. If this fails, don't come back. On the way back to Earl Carriston's estate, he said to Natalie, that was incredibly dangerous today. What would I have done if something had happened to you? Thinking back, those rumors about Charles are probably true. Stay away from him from now on. Natalie immediately replied, Father, don't worry. Think about it. If His Grace was truly as the rumors say, why would he save me today? Wouldn't it have been in his best interest to let the assassin harm me? Earl Carriston fell silent, realizing the logic in Natalie's words. She continued, moreover, he personally escorted us back to ensure my safety. I don't think he's that kind of person. If I'm not mistaken, the mastermind behind this incident is Princess Amelia. She's infatuated with Charles and won't allow any other woman to like or approach him. Anyone who does meets a tragic end. She did all this just to have him to herself. They finally arrived home. The carriage wheels screeched to a halt, and Natalie and Earl Carriston quickly disembarked. Thank you for escorting us back, Your Grace. Charles addressed Natalie directly, his voice low and serious. Natalie Carriston, if you don't stay away from me, something like this will happen again. I advise you to reconsider my previous proposal. If you agree, I guarantee you won't be put in danger like today. Thank you for your concern, but the person targeting me at the moment is Princess Amelia, and my feelings for you far outweigh my fear of danger. She set her sights on me and won't give up easily. So, rather than trusting your promise, I'd rather trust the support of the entire Ben-Knox dukedom. Therefore, Your Grace, please don't try to persuade me any further. My feelings for you will never change. My backing is the old duke. Someone like me, who loves his son, is the kind of daughter-in-law he approves of. Without the old duke's protection, how could I possibly deal with Princess Amelia's schemes? Exasperated by Natalie's stubbornness, Charles retorted, if you insist on being so obstinate, be careful when you go out next time. I won't save you every time like I did today. You actually care about my safety? I'm so touched. Natalie thought to herself, a hint of sarcasm lacing her inner monologue. Does he really need to remind me of these things? I'll rearrange my security detail as soon as I get back. Since I've been reborn, I won't die boobin' again. Charles was speechless. This woman was truly stubborn. With a sharp tug on the reins, he turned his horse and departed. Natalie and Earl Carriston watched him go. Farewell, Your Grace. Meanwhile, Inside the Earl's mansion, Fiona and her mother were eavesdropping. "Mother, did you hear what they were saying?" Fiona asked. Her mother replied, "Not very clearly, but Duke Ben Knox personally escorted Natalie home. That means their relationship is unusual." Fiona seethed. "Damn it, she's only worthy of someone like Ryan. How can she be worthy of his grace? Mother, we have to break them up immediately." Suddenly, her mother had an idea. "Go and say some nice things about Ryan in front of Natalie. That way, Ryan will quickly deliver those books. Natalie is foolishly kind and will definitely be persuaded." Fiona burst into the drawing room. "Natalie, oh my goodness, I heard you and Father were attacked outside. I was so scared. Are you all right? Are you hurt anywhere?" "I'm completely unharmed," Natalie replied calmly. "Duke Ben Knox protected me very well." Hearing this, Fiona was stunned for a few seconds. That's good. Mother and I are relieved." "Oh, by the way, Ryan also heard about your attack and was very worried. He wants to visit you." Natalie looked at Fiona. "Of course, he's always welcome." Fiona quickly responded, "Wonderful. I'll have Daisy inform him right away." Natalie was well aware of Fiona's plan. Asking for meetings so quickly, she must want him to give me the books. "Fine, I'm happy to receive him. After all, I'm looking forward to this little drama." Upon hearing that Natalie wanted to see him, Ryan rushed over immediately. The maid announced, "Young Master Ryan has arrived." Ryan entered and politely greeted, "Good evening, Earl Carriston." Earl Carriston invited Ryan to sit down. "There's no need to be so formal. Please have a seat." Ryan thanked him and sat down, gently placing the books on the table. "Earl Carriston, I've actually come today to—" Before Ryan could finish, Natalie interrupted him. "Young Master Ryan, there's no need to continue. My father and I both understand your intentions." Ryan's face lit up with joy. "You and the Earl both know?" He thought to himself, "Excellent. If the Earl agrees, the marriage can be settled quickly." "Yes, my father and I know about your feelings for Fiona. We're preparing to expedite your marriage as soon as possible." Earl Carriston continued Natalie's charade. Indeed, Natalie even suggested I prepare a generous dowry for Fiona, and I've already agreed. Ryan clenched his hands in shock. "A generous dowry? I never imagined for Fiona, a stepdaughter, to be worth so much." Fiona and her mother gasped. "What?" Fiona stood up to explain. "Father, you've misunderstood. I don't have those kinds of feelings for young Master Ryan." Fiona's mother chimed in. "Yes, darling, it's a misunderstanding. Sister, you don't need to hide it anymore. Father, and I saw Daisy delivering books to young Master Ryan. You must have instructed her. I think you must have misunderstood my relationship with young Master Ryan, and that's why you're hiding your feelings. I truly care about you. You don't need to suffer in silence." Fiona raised her voice to Natalie. "I didn't." Her mother quickly pulled her back. "Don't say anything more. The Earl already knows about the books. If you continue arguing, our plan to use young Master Ryan to get close to Natalie will be exposed." Ryan sat down, indignant. "I've been wrongly accused," Fiona's mother thought, deciding to stall for time and figure out a solution later. She turned to Earl Carriston with a forced smile. "Darling, even if Fiona has feelings for young Master Ryan, marriage is a serious matter that requires careful consideration." Earl Carriston chuckled. "Naturally," Natalie added, "Mother, don't worry. Fiona and I are both Father's treasures. He will certainly be cautious. This is just the beginning, Fiona. Just you wait and see how long it takes you to get married." At Charles's villa, someone reported, "Your Grace, I've discovered that Ryan, the second son of Earl Constance, is pursuing Miss Natalie." Hearing this news, Charles paused his writing. "Thoroughly investigate Ryan's background. If there are no issues, he and Natalie seem quite suitable. Perhaps encouraging them would help keep Natalie away from me." Meanwhile, at Princess Amelia's villa, her attendant rushed in to report, "Your Highness, the second son of Earl Constance, Ryan, is indeed pursuing Natalie." As soon as Duke Ben Knox discovered this, he immediately dispatched men to secretly blockade Earl Constance's territory and investigate Ryan. Princess Amelia gripped the cup on her table tightly. Charles is personally investigating Ryan? Could he truly have feelings for Natalie? She commanded her attendant. Regardless of what kind of person Ryan is, the information Charles receives must be positive. Understand. The attendant immediately left to make arrangements. A bird flew to Charles's villa. landing on his hand. Charles untied the letter attached to the bird's leg and opened it. Ryan Constance, although the second son and unable to inherit the title, is of upstanding character and deeply loved by Earl Constance. He is likely to inherit a significant portion of the family fortune and is the ideal husband for many noble ladies in the region. The ideal husband? Then I must find a way to expedite Natalie's union with him. As Charles was thinking about Natalie, she arrived. "Miss Natalie, this way, please." Natalie softly greeted, "Good day, Your Grace." Charles thought this might be a good opportunity to encourage her relationship with Ryan. He asked, "What brings you here today?" Natalie replied, "I've come to borrow the copy of Military Fortifications you recently acquired. The Duchess has already given her permission." "Very well. I'll have Linda take you to the library. I'll join you shortly." Natalie hadn't expected Charles to agree so readily. She thought he would at least hesitate, even after invoking the Duchess's name. His attitude today was strange. Could he have another plan? "Miss Natalie, this way, please." Natalie politely replied, "Thank you for your trouble." After Natalie left, Charles strode to his desk, picked up his pen, and immediately wrote, "Find Ryan Constance and have him come to the dukedom." Then, Charles rang a bell, summoning a messenger bird. He attached the letter to the bird's leg and watched as it flew away, carrying the message. The maid opened the library door. "Miss Natalie, this is the library." Natalie thanked her again. Then a voice called out, "Miss Natalie?" Natalie was surprised to find Eli here. To avoid suspicion, Eli quickly explained, I'm looking for a book analyzing romantic musicals, but I don't know where to start." Hearing this, Natalie suddenly remembered something. "Perhaps you could look at Matthew Keller's History of Musicals. If I recall correctly, Chapter 11 should have relevant information." "Really? You remember such an obscure book so clearly." "Let me see, I have that book at home. I'll go get it and check." Eli retrieved the book. This is it. Flipping through the pages, Eli was surprised to find the content he was looking for indeed in Chapter 11, as Natalie had said. Romantic musicals stand out for their diverse styles and unique lyricism, becoming a significant genre in music history. Musicals of this period focus on expressing the character's emotions. "Oh my, just as Miss Natalie said. You're unexpectedly erudite." Natalie smiled. "You flatter me. I just happened to read it recently." Suddenly, Charles walked in. "What are you two discussing?" "It seems like a lively conversation. Miss Natalie helped me find the book I was looking for." "It's wonderful," Natalie replied. "You keep praising me. I'm getting embarrassed." "Miss Natalie, there's no need for such modesty." Charles looked at Natalie and took her wrist. "You're here to borrow Military Fortifications, right? This way, follow me." Hearing this, Eli thought, Military Fortifications? Natalie reads that kind of book too? Could she be deliberately mentioning it to my uncle, trying to impress him? It would be awkward if she's found out. Charles handed the book to Natalie. "You can read it here, but you can't take it with you." Natalie took the book. "Of course, I wasn't planning on taking it with me. Reading it here might give me more opportunities to discuss it with you." Natalie gently opened the book, and the atmosphere became quiet. She glanced at Charles. "He really likes this book. I must seize this opportunity to make a good impression. Even if I can't make him fall for me, at least I can't let him dislike me. That way, if Princess Amelia targets me, he might be more inclined to protect me." Natalie turned to Charles and asked, "Your Grace, this book says that the current system of walls and towers is outdated and should be developed towards thicker walls and larger tower bases. Do you agree?" "Of course, with the increasing power and range of cannons, fortifications need lower walls and towers to minimize damage, while increasing wall thickness. At the same time, the bases of watchtowers should be expanded to accommodate multiple cannons for frontal defense and flanking fire on trenches." Natalie asked Charles again, "Am I right, Your Grace?" Charles hadn't expected Natalie to be so knowledgeable about military fortifications. He had underestimated her, thinking she was just putting on an act. Eli clicked his tongue. "Although I don't understand what they're talking about, judging by my uncle's expression, Miss Natalie's performance seems to have exceeded his expectations." Eli thought, "I have to create more opportunities for Charles to get to know Miss Natalie better. Miss Natalie, please forgive my boldness, but I have many more questions to ask you. If you have time, please visit the dukedom often." Natalie blushed. "This?" Charles frowned. This guy, could he be interested in Natalie because of what just happened? Seeing this, Charles reminded Eli, "You should leave now." Eli was about to excuse himself, as it was indeed time for him to leave. Suddenly, he changed his mind. "I happen to be free today, so I can stay and accompany you and offer some advice letting you experience my nephew's warmth. Just like me. Charles said meaningfully. Eli, think again. Are you sure you have no other plans today? Eli froze, immediately realizing his uncle was angry. Although he didn't know where he had offended him, he was indeed angry. Eli broke out in a cold sweat. Like a wisp of smoke, Eli hurriedly ran off. I suddenly remembered, I do have urgent matters today. I'll excuse myself. Now only Charles and Natalie were left. She secretly wondered, since he had driven Eli away like that, did it mean they were now alone together? If she were truly a woman in love with Charles, she would be overjoyed at this moment. Therefore, Natalie decided to play the part. She quickly adopted a coy expression. Your Grace, she began. Did you suddenly send Eli away because you were jealous of his invitation for me to visit the dukedom? Charles was speechless. You're overthinking it. I just found him too noisy. He was disturbing my reading. Natalie sighed dramatically, feigning disappointment. Is that so? I thought perhaps your Grace had a little bit of affection for me, even just a tiny bit. Charles thought to himself, this Natalie truly has a silver tongue. Just then, a maid entered and announced to the Duke, Master Ryan has arrived. Charles gave his consent for Ryan to enter. Natalie was curious. When did Ryan establish a connection with the dukedom? As Ryan entered, he politely greeted Charles. Charles courteously invited Ryan to sit. Natalie secretly speculated about Charles's attitude towards Ryan. Such politeness. Could he have specifically invited him? But why? With Ryan's status, he shouldn't be appearing at the dukedom at all. Ryan began to thank Charles, then suddenly noticed Natalie's presence and froze. He recalled Fiona saying she had been trying to seduce the Duke recently. Could she have succeeded, and even instigated the Duke to find trouble with him? Ryan hurriedly spoke. Your Grace, although I don't know why you summoned me, I want to say that I've heard the knights speak of your undefeated reputation in battle and your powerful ice magic. I greatly admire you, and it's an honor to meet you today. Please accept my sincerest praise. Charles noticed that this Ryan didn't seem to match the image of the scoundrel he'd heard about. He stood up decisively. No need for so many words. You and Natalie can read here. I have to step out for a moment. Ryan was a little surprised. Charles didn't seem to have any intention of causing him trouble. Natalie understood. So that was it. Charles agreed to lend her the book and even had Eli invite Ryan over, probably because he'd heard the rumors of Ryan's pursuit of her and wanted to bring them together. This way, she would be further removed from Charles. She wondered if Charles understood Ryan's true character before making this decision. However, since things had developed to this point, she would play along. Ryan thought to himself, if Duke Ben Knox hadn't brought him here to cause trouble, then this was a good opportunity to win Natalie's favor, and he couldn't miss it. He forced a cheerful smile. Natalie, you misunderstood. Last time, I only liked you. I never liked Fiona. You must know my feelings for you. Natalie replied, Of course I know. Silly Fiona, talking about seducing the Duke. It must all be lies. Otherwise, why would you believe me so easily and be fooled by my few words? Ryan, lost in thought, asked Natalie, So, do you agree to be with me? He assumed she would reluctantly agree. After all, his status was considerable. Suddenly, Natalie said, Don't rush. I have a surprise for you. He asked, puzzled, What is it? Natalie abruptly ripped a piece from her sleeve. Ryan was startled, and before he could react, Natalie threw herself against the wall with considerable force. Outside, Charles was still thinking that Ryan must have seized the opportunity to confess to Natalie by now. He wondered if she had accepted. He reasoned that if she agreed, she wouldn't bother him anymore. Thinking this, Charles was about to turn and leave, believing this was also for Natalie's safety. Suddenly, he heard a commotion from inside the room. Charles immediately returned to check the situation. To his astonishment, Natalie was sitting on the floor, trembling. Master Ryan, she said, I know you like me, but I don't have feelings for you. Please don't do this. He never imagined things would turn out this way. Charles quickly ordered someone to restrain Ryan and hurried to Natalie's side. Ryan panicked and quickly explained, Your Grace, it wasn't me. He finally understood. Natalie had framed him. Ryan cursed Natalie inwardly. Seeing Natalie's apparent injury, Charles worriedly moved to help her bandage it, but she spoke weakly. I'm sorry, Your Grace. I'm so frightened. My legs have no strength. Charles was silent for a few seconds, then bent down and scooped Natalie into his arms, holding her gently. Natalie hadn't expected Charles to actually carry her just because she was pretending to be weak. It seemed he wasn't as cold as the rumor suggested, but rather quite gentle and considerate. Ryan, still behind them, called out, "Your Grace! I swear on the goddess of light. From the moment I stepped into this room, I haven't touched Natalie. She deliberately injured herself to frame me. You mustn't believe her." Charles paused slightly. "Regarding the accusations against Ryan Constance, what do you have to say?" he asked Natalie. Natalie replied calmly, "I am so enamored with you. Your Grace, how could I bear to harm myself? If my hand were to scar, I would be unable to receive your affections." Hearing this, Ryan shouted, "You're lying. You're deceiving Duke Bennox." Natalie spoke softly. "If Master Ryan refuses to admit his guilt, then please, Your Grace, investigate thoroughly. I have always treated him well and have absolutely no reason to frame him. Surely Master Ryan wouldn't find it so shameful to admit his wrongdoing." Ryan felt as if stabbed in the heart. If Duke Bennox investigated thoroughly, then his agreement with Fiona would be exposed, which would be even more detrimental to him. He knew Natalie was clearly acting, but if he tried to cover it up, it would only make him appear more suspicious. At this moment, Charles spoke. "There's no need for an investigation. I believe Miss Natalie. Take Ryan Constance away and give him 50 lashes. Inform Earl Carriston that I will discipline his son on his behalf and that he can come collect him." Ryan couldn't believe Charles was so ruthless. He knelt on the ground, knowing he was finished. If his father learned he had offended Duke Bennox, he would be deeply disappointed and would likely abandon him. Within the Bennox dukedom, Ryan's miserable cries echoed, each lash landing squarely on his back. Charles walked past, carrying Natalie, without even glancing at him. That screaming is truly music to my ears. So satisfying, Natalie thought. Ryan's heart seethed with hatred. All of this was because of Natalie's deliberate framing. Her previous innocent and pure demeanor was all a pretense. She wanted to use Duke Bennox's hand to destroy him. Held in Charles's arms, Natalie thought, "Don't worry, I won't let you die so quickly, Ryan. This whipping you're receiving today is merely the appetizer in my banquet of revenge. You tortured me, humiliated me, imprisoned me in my past life. I will repay you tenfold, not missing a single thing. I will make you fall into a terrifying abyss step by step, letting you also taste what it's like to live a life worse than death." Seeing Ryan endure the heavy blows, Natalie felt a surge of satisfaction. She suppressed a smile, thinking that everything Ryan Constance was suffering was nothing more than what he deserved. Suddenly, Charles noticed Natalie trembling and asked, "What's wrong?" Natalie realized her mistake. "Oops, I was too happy, too carried away." She had to fabricate a story. "I'm sorry, the whipping was too bloody. I'm truly frightened." Her words almost made the Duke laugh. "If you'll permit me, may I lean on you for a moment?" Charles was puzzled. He had already punished Ryan. Why was Natalie still feigning weakness? But he didn't refuse her request, which surprised Natalie. She pushed her luck, blushing as she said, "Thank you, Your Grace. To be able to lean on you, even if I've lost a lot of blood, it's worth it." Charles thought this woman was truly troublesome, but he didn't rebuke her. Back in his room, he pondered. If Ryan hadn't lied, why would she self-harm to frame him? Charles couldn't understand it. Suddenly, a subordinate entered to report an emergency. Charles called the subordinate in to speak. The man reported with remorse. "Due to Princess Amelia's intervention, my investigation into Ryan Constance was flawed. In reality, he's accumulated gambling debts within his own territory and frequently engages in brawls and disturbances. He's a genuine scoundrel." Hearing this, Charles understood why Natalie had acted so strangely. He immediately ordered his subordinate to receive punishment for the misinformation. He then returned to Natalie's side. She informed Charles that she had bandaged her wound and thanked him. He thought to himself, if I hadn't rashly paired her with Ryan without a proper investigation, she wouldn't have resorted to such extreme measures to protect herself. Charles suddenly felt a pang of guilt and stammered. Just then, Charles's father, the Grand Duke, appeared, scolding his son. "You rascal! How could you allow Natalie to be injured under your care?" Eli, who was also present, approached Charles. "Indeed, uncle. Normally, You manage so many soldiers without issue, yet today you let Miss Natalie get hurt right under your nose. You must not have been attentive enough. Seeing Charles being misunderstood, Natalie quickly explained, "It's just a small injury, nothing serious. Please don't blame the Duke." Charles hadn't expected her to speak up for him. "So it doesn't hurt anymore?" The Grand Duke praised Natalie. "You're truly understanding. I'll give you face and spare this rascal." He turned to Charles, instructing him to personally escort Natalie home safely. Charles didn't refuse, as he also had something he wanted to ask Natalie. This made Natalie rather uneasy. What did Charles want to ask? The next day, someone knocked on Natalie's door. It was the butler announcing that the Grand Duke, the Duke, and young Master Eli had come to visit her. Natalie invited the three of them in, not expecting Fiona and her stepmother to be with them. Her stepmother had already instructed Fiona to control her expression and accompany them to familiarize herself with the situation. Upon meeting, Natalie greeted them. "Good morning, Earl Carriston, Your Grace, young Master Eli." The Grand Duke said to Natalie, "No need to be so formal. We'll be family soon. Just treat me as your father." Eli chimed in, advising, "Natalie is injured and shouldn't be moving around too much. Please sit down quickly. Otherwise, your injury might worsen, and then my uncle would be heartbroken." Eli playfully winked at Charles. Hearing Eli's nonsense again, Charles frowned. The Grand Duke laughed heartily, saying that seeing Natalie looking well put his mind at ease. Natalie's father observed in secret. It was clear that the Grand Duke was very fond of his daughter, but he still worried that Duke Bennox was too dangerous. He only wished for Natalie to live a peaceful life, and in that regard, Charles Bennox was clearly not a suitable match. Seeing this scene, Fiona trembled with anger, thinking, "Damn it, what kind of spell did this monster cast on the Duke to make him trust her so much? I absolutely won't allow Natalie to have the most desirable man in the Empire. I deserve to marry better and live a better life." Watching Fiona's face flush with anger, Natalie felt a surge of satisfaction. She suddenly thought, if I add a little more fuel to the fire, Fiona might just explode. With this in mind, she immediately put on a bright smile and said, "Thank you for your kindness, Grand Duke, and thank you for your concern, young Master Eli. If I can receive the Duke's pity because of my injury, then the wound won't hurt so much." The Grand Duke disagreed, correcting her words. "What are you saying? Even if you weren't injured, he should still care for you. Otherwise, I'll teach him a lesson." Natalie politely thanked him. Seeing how much the Grand Duke cherished Natalie, Fiona felt even more uncomfortable. The Grand Duke continued chatting pleasantly with Natalie, while Charles thought to himself, "This woman, to curry favor with me, can actually speak such venomous words with such sincerity. She's truly mad." Suddenly, the Grand Duke noticed his son's indifferent attitude and cursed inwardly, "You blockhead. Natalie is showing goodwill, and you don't even respond. When such a good wife runs away, you'll regret it." But after all, he was his own son, so he decided to help Charles out. He said, "Natalie's bandages will likely need changing soon. Let's not delay," and move to the drawing room. Natalie's stepmother politely invited them to enjoy refreshments prepared by Fiona. Eli replied frankly, "Tea is fine, but we'll pass on the refreshments. Grandfather and I aren't particularly fond of sweets. They're too rich." The Grand Duke concurred, stating that tea would suffice. Natalie's stepmother forced a pleasant smile, while Fiona's mood soured considerably. Suddenly, Eli noticed Charles still lingering in the room. He said, "After all, Natalie was injured because of you, Uncle. You should stay and take care of her." With that, Eli shut the door with a bang, leaving Charles inside. A heavy silence settled between Charles and Natalie. In the spacious room, Natalie thought, young Master Eli has created this opportunity. It would be a shame to waste it. Just then, she noticed the bandages resting on the table. She adopted a pitiful expression, as if preparing to change the dressings herself. Seeing Natalie's apparent predicament, Charles thought, why doesn't she call for a servant? But Charles sighed, thinking, her injury is indeed my fault. Lending a hand is the least I can do. He sat down carefully and offered to change Natalie's bandages. "Of course," she replied. "It's truly an honor to have the Duke himself change my bandages." Charles simply replied, "There's no one else here. Drop the act. I'll remove the bandages. Turn your head." Natalie obediently complied. She was surprised to find Charles's touch even gentler than Bella's. Could it be that he feels guilty about the Ryan incident and is being extra careful? She wondered. It was an unexpected side of him. Natalie had assumed that someone of Charles's high standing wouldn't be so considerate of others' feelings. But but when she turned to look, she saw the focused expression on Charles's face as he bandaged her wound. It was mesmerizing. Even the way he bit off the excess fabric with his teeth was enough to make Natalie blush. Natalie's unwavering gaze made Charles feel a little self-conscious. He paused and looked up at her. He explained, "I'm used to doing it this way from my time in the army. It's much faster." Then, turning back to Natalie, Charles said, "Let's go to the drawing room for tea." In the drawing room, Natalie's stepmother presented the tea to the Earl. "This is black tea from the East. Please enjoy." A maid poured the fragrant tea into delicate cups. The Grand Duke inhaled the aroma, seemingly finding it unique. Meanwhile, Natalie noticed something seemed amiss with the maid. Suddenly, the teacup tilted, spilling the hot liquid. The maid gasped, dropping to her knees and begging Natalie for forgiveness. "I didn't do it on purpose. Please don't kill me," she cried. The Grand Duke and Eli exchanged surprised glances at the maid's plea for Natalie not to kill her. Natalie's father exclaimed, "Martha, what nonsense are you talking about? Why would Natalie kill you for spilling tea?" Fiona chimed in, "Indeed, anyone who didn't know better would think my sister abuses her daily." Her stepmother added, "I must remind you, falsely accusing your mistress in front of the Duke is a serious crime. Surely you wouldn't be so foolish." Martha cast a tearful glance at Natalie. Natalie, however, was taken aback by Martha's unexpectedly convincing performance. How can she feign such terror so convincingly? She wondered, observing Martha's frightened expression. She recalled a time when Natalie had tearfully asked Martha, "Has my divorce letter not reached the capital yet? Why hasn't the church responded?" Martha had simply replied with disdain, "Poor Miss Natalie, let me tell you the truth. I've become young Master Ryan's woman. Your letter never left this house." Martha had uttered those cruel words herself. In her past life, after Bella's death, Martha, Natalie's personal maid, had accompanied her to her husband's estate, only to betray her, leading to Natalie's imprisonment. Natalie had trusted Martha, relied on her, only to be plunged into the depths of despair by her treachery. Now, Martha was putting on another passionate performance. "I would never dare falsely accuse Miss Natalie in front of the Duke. I was simply flustered from my mistake and spoke out of turn." Natalie's father immediately chastised Martha, saying her words only cast further suspicion on Natalie. "What are you trying to do?" he demanded. Martha apologized, claiming she didn't know what to say and begged the Earl's forgiveness. Today, Martha had once again become a weapon wielded by Natalie's stepmother and Fiona, relentlessly seeking to ruin her reputation and bring her down. Martha's slip-up had truly angered Natalie's father, who also remembered the dubious relationship between Martha and Ryan. Natalie decided that today she would deal with Martha first as a prelude to her revenge. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, Natalie's father stood and apologized to the Grand Duke. "Please don't listen to the servants' gossip. I swear on my life, Natalie is not that kind of person." Fiona was astonished by how much her father favored Natalie, always willing to defend her. But the more he did so, the more Fiona seethed, wanting to torment Natalie even in death. "What right does Natalie have to possess what I can't?" she thought bitterly. She suddenly spoke up. "Father, you're often busy with work and rarely home. Even if you swear to the Grand Duke, it won't be very convincing. It will seem like you're just covering for her. Why don't we hear what sister has to say?" Natalie's father was worried. Natalie had never faced this kind of situation before. Just then, Natalie's stepmother chimed in. "I agree with Fiona. Natalie is the one involved. She has the right to explain herself. That would be much more convincing. Grand Duke, what do you think?" She thought slyly, Natalie has always been weak and foolish. She won't be able to explain herself clearly, and even if she had 100 mouths, no one would believe her. The Grand Duke, deciding to see how things would unfold, turned to Natalie. "Martha is accusing you of mistreating the servants. Do you have any explanation?" Eli also spoke to Natalie, urging her to speak up if she was hiding anything. "My uncle is here. As long as you explain clearly, he will be able to discern the truth and make a fair judgment for you." Natalie looked at Charles, questioning whether he truly would judge her fairly. He calmly agreed if she were indeed innocent. With that, Natalie decided to speak. Without hesitation, she said, "Actually, I'm not innocent at all." The three men stared at her in bewilderment, waiting for her explanation. Charles was even more surprised. This madwoman actually admitted it? What is she planning? Natalie began to weep. "Although I've never mistreated the servants, Martha's fear of me might mean I've done something wrong, causing her to misunderstand. Respected Grand Duke, I hope you can uphold justice for Martha and thoroughly investigate this matter, so I can understand my shortcomings and correct them. These words truly surprised the Grand Duke. Natalie, he said quickly, I didn't expect you to be so self-reflective at this moment. Your character is even more noble than I imagined. Eli, beside him, also offered comfort. Don't worry. Since you've said so, we will definitely investigate the truth and clear your name. Natalie gratefully thanked the Grand Duke and Eli. Charles was slightly taken aback. This woman is actually using a strategy of retreating to advance. She's not stupid at all. Seeing how things were developing, Natalie's father politely made a request to the Grand Duke. Although he didn't wish for his beloved Natalie to marry into the Bennox family, for the sake of her reputation, he felt it best to rely on them to investigate the matter. Natalie's stepmother panicked. Her plan was about to be ruined. She had to find a way to stop the Duke's household from interfering, or both she and Fiona would be implicated. Your Grace, Duke Bennox, Natalie's stepmother interjected quickly. Since you and the Grand Duke are so busy, why not leave this matter to me to investigate? Fiona chimed in, her voice bright with feigned enthusiasm. Exactly. Managing the household servants is Mother's responsibility. She will certainly give everyone a satisfactory result. Natalie shook her head, objecting. My stepmother has always doted on me. If she investigates, everyone will say she's covering for me, protecting my reputation. It would be best if the Duke handles the investigation. Natalie's stepmother was startled. Natalie had dared to interrupt her. Forcing a smile, she said, Natalie is truly thoughtful. Then we'll have to trouble your Grace and the Duke. Of course, neither Charles nor his father minded. Eli even added, Miss Carriston will soon be my aunt. It's worth mobilizing any resources of the Bennox dukedom for her. At this, Natalie's stepmother could only manage an awkward smile and agree. Charles, without hesitation, ordered Martha to be taken back to the Bennox estate. It was only then that Martha truly panicked, stammering pleas for mercy. Her stepmother, however, was blunt. At the Duke's estate, you must tell the truth. If you dare to lie, not only will the Duke not spare you, but neither will I. Then she mouthed the words, and your family. Martha trembled, tears streaming down her face. The veiled threat in her stepmother's words hit home, and she seemed on the verge of collapse. Then, suddenly, she cried out, her voice laced with desperation. You nobles are all the same. I don't believe you'll give me justice. I will absolutely not go with you. With a swift movement, she reached down and grabbed a shard of glass from the shattered vase. Charles, ever vigilant, saw Martha's action. In a flash, he pulled Natalie behind him, shielding her. Martha, feeling utterly wronged, cried out to everyone present, You'll all go to hell. Charles, protectively positioned in front of Natalie, held a defensive stance. Natalie's face was a mask of worry, frozen in place behind him. For a moment, she felt as if he had saved her life again. Martha, reaching the peak of her despair, could no longer contain herself. With a shard of glass clutched in her hand, she ended her own life. Charles Bennox, witnessing the horrific act, was stunned. Hey you, he shouted. Natalie, too, was frozen in shock. The others gasped, rushing forward. What happened? Fiona and her mother feigned shock and horror. Martha, she killed herself? My goodness, how terrible. Bennox shielded Natalie, but she was still visibly shaken by the suicide. My stepmother's methods are truly as cruel as I imagined, Natalie thought, a wave of sadness washing over her. It's a shame. Although Martha's end is exactly what I wanted, now is not the time to rejoice. Suddenly, Natalie clutched Bennox's hand, feeling dizzy. So much blood, she murmured before fainting. Fortunately, Bennox caught her as she fell. He, too, was startled, his expression filled with concern. Seeing his daughter collapse, Earl Carriston rushed over, his face pale with worry. Natalie's stepmother feigned concern as well. Poor Natalie, seeing that must have frightened her terribly. Someone, take the young miss back to her room to rest. The Grand Duke urged his son. Natalie has fainted. Aren't you going to take her back to her room? Bennox looked down at Natalie, momentarily speechless. He sighed softly. Very well, he said to her, then lifted her into his arms. Addressing the others, he said, Please excuse me. Eli, watching the scene unfold, felt a surge of hope. Uncle, you must seize this opportunity, he thought. Fiona glared at Eli, consumed with jealousy, her eyes burning red. You wretch, she cursed Natalie in her mind. What right do you have to attract the attention of both Eli and Duke Bennox? I will never forgive you, absolutely never. The scene shifted to Natalie's room, where Bennox gently carried her inside. He then said coldly, "We're alone now. You can drop the act." This man is difficult to fool, Natalie thought, her heart pounding. My feint was quite convincing, but no matter how he saw through her, she had to keep up the pretense. There was no turning back now. Composing herself, Natalie continued her performance. She sighed, her words carefully chosen. "Your Grace, how could I bear to deceive you? I truly was so frightened my legs gave way." Bennox continued, "Is that so? Then let me drop you and see." And with that, he loosened his grip, letting her fall. Panic flared across Natalie's face. She couldn't believe he'd actually let go. She stumbled, nearly falling again before Charles caught her. Feigning embarrassment, she murmured, "Thank you, Your Grace. I didn't expect you to be so concerned for me." Charles's voice was laced with impatience. "You're truly stubborn. What's the point of continuing this charade when you've already been exposed?" Natalie maintained her innocent facade. "I don't understand what you're saying. My feelings for you are absolutely genuine. No matter how many times you test me, I will say the same." Charles lowered his voice. "Is that so?" He, too, was curious to see how long she could keep up the act. He tilted her chin upwards. "Since you're so fond of me, and we're alone in a room together, you must be anticipating some intimacy, right?" Natalie froze, momentarily speechless, unsure how to respond. Charles gently placed a finger against her lips. She stiffened, bewildered. Why was he doing this? Was this another test? Collecting herself, she managed, "Of course, I'm willing, but I'm a little worried." Charles cut her off. "If you're worried, then close your eyes." Natalie closed her eyes, her voice a playful challenge. "I didn't expect you to take the initiative. Does this mean you have some feelings for me too?" Inwardly, however, her thoughts were a whirlwind. Why is he making me close my eyes? Does he really intend to kiss me to test me? We're not in that kind of relationship. Charles, too, was reevaluating the chaotic events. It was clear that Natalie's stepmother and stepsister were not to be underestimated, and her father, the Earl, was often preoccupied with official duties. He could imagine what she must have endured growing up. Natalie's eyes remained tightly shut, her nerves stretched taut. Why isn't he doing anything? Does he want to do something more daring than a kiss? Charles thought silently. So she's clinging to me, seeking the protection of the Bennox dukedom to escape her current predicament. After a long silence, Natalie finally whispered, "I can't see. I feel unsafe, Your Grace. Why aren't you doing anything? Have you suddenly become disgusted with me?" A faint smile played on Charles's lips. He released her, turning away as if nothing had happened. "I'll maintain this relationship for now," he thought. "After all, if I abandon her at this point, the royal court will hound her to death." He turned back to her. "Rest. I'll go and deal with the maid situation." Natalie watched his retreating figure, a surge of resentment rising within her. Damn him. He rejected me. The scene shifted to the royal palace. Earl Carriston walked wearily, sighing. Finally, it's over. I can go home. I wonder if Natalie is asleep. The thought of his daughter's distress and his inability to be by her side filled him with guilt. Suddenly, a voice called his name from behind. It was Princess Arya. "It's been a while, Earl Carriston. How have you been?" Earl Carriston bowed respectfully. "Thank you for your concern, Your Highness. I'm well." Arya offered a condescending smile. "I heard your daughter, Miss Natalie, was recently attacked." Earl Carriston was taken aback. How did this news reach the palace? He wondered anxiously. Could it be true, as Natalie suggested, that the women around Bennox have met with misfortune because of Arya's orders? Arya watched his expression intently. "I know you're an intelligent man. I hope your daughter inherited your wit. Otherwise, more terrible things await her." The Earl felt a chill of fear. This was a blatant threat. He forced himself to remain calm, replying in a light tone, "I apologize for causing Your Highness concern. I'll find a kind and considerate husband for Natalie as soon as possible, so her life can be more peaceful." A sinister expression crossed Arya's face. She was pleased with his response. "Earl, you truly are the best diplomat in the capital. You understand people's hearts. I'll look forward to seeing your actions. Don't keep me waiting too long." With that, she turned and left with her attendant. Earl Carriston watched them go, his heart heavy with worry. Princess Arya has been spoiled by His Majesty since childhood. She's known for her arrogance and vindictiveness. If Natalie loses the protection of the Bennox dukedom, I fear she won't let it go and will retaliate fiercely. He sighed. There's no other way. I must continue to encourage a match between Natalie and Eli. Eli is good to Natalie, and with the continued protection of the Bennox family, he can certainly help her escape Princess Arya's clutches. The scene shifted to the following morning at Duke Bennox's residence. Charles was writing a letter. A remote region is experiencing unrest due to foreign interference. This originally had nothing to do with me, but Grand Duke Gilera seems to think it's important enough for my attention. Suddenly, Eli knocked and entered, excitedly holding something. "Uncle, I brought you something good." Charles merely responded with a cool, "Put it on the table." Eli, impatient, urged, "Could you focus on something other than work for once? This is a handwritten invitation from the Earl, your future father-in-law." He placed it on the table, ensuring it was within Charles's line of sight. Grinning, he added, "A formal invitation must mean important matters to discuss. Open it and see." Charles opened the invitation, his brow furrowing in surprise. It read, "To Eli Bennox, as spring returns to the earth, you are invited to the Earl's residence for afternoon tea." He was taken aback. Only Eli had been invited. He slipped the invitation back into its envelope, a flicker of disappointment crossing his features. This is to be expected. The Earl chose Eli for his daughter from the beginning. Eli, noticing his uncle's expression, panicked. "Why that look? Is it bad news? Is Natalie's injury worse?" Charles chided him. "Don't spout nonsense. It's an invitation for afternoon tea. I have work. You take a gift and go." Eli was bewildered. "Why me?" Charles stated flatly. "If you don't want to go, then don't." Eli thought glumly. "My uncle is so clueless. He's making me run errands. Still, it's better that I go than anyone else." He trudged towards the door, turning back to add, "Fine, I'll go. But you're paying for the gift." The scene shifted to Earl Carriston's residence. He and Natalie were waiting to receive their guest. Eli, holding a gift box, greeted them cheerfully. "Good day, Earl Carriston." Natalie found it odd. Her father had suddenly announced he had important matters to discuss with Eli, and her presence was required. It was highly unusual. Eli presented the gift to Natalie. "This is a gift my uncle picked out for you. Please accept it." He thought to himself, "I have to take matters into my own hands. Otherwise, who knows how long it will take my uncle to win over my aunt." Natalie accepted the gift, thanking him. Earl Carriston realized, "It seems Bennox is aware that I specifically invited Eli. This is good. Now that he knows my intentions, he'll likely cease pursuing Natalie." He gestured graciously. "The garden is prepared. Please come in." Meanwhile, back at his residence, Charles found himself unable to concentrate on his work. "This work is so troublesome," he thought irritably, glancing repeatedly at the invitation on his desk, growing increasingly restless. Finally, he summoned his maid, Linda. "Your Grace, what are your orders?" she inquired respectfully. Charles instructed her to select a suitable outfit for him. "I'm going to the Earl's residence." Linda acknowledged his command and promptly went to make the arrangements. In the garden, Natalie questioned her father. "Why did you specifically invite Eli? What important matters do you have to discuss?" Her voice was laced with both concern and anxiety. Eli, surprised, pointed at himself. "Me? Not my uncle, Earl Carriston." Earl Carriston smiled, explaining, "Well, Duke Bennox is a busy man, and I didn't want to trouble him further by asking him to visit Natalie again. I heard Eli is less occupied and is skilled in music and dance, so I thought to invite you to keep Natalie company. She's been bored while recovering at home and needs some entertainment to lift her spirits and pass the time." Natalie froze, realizing her father was still intent on fostering a relationship between her and Eli. Clearly, in her father's mind, the Duke remained a dangerous prospect. Finally ready, Charles set off for the Earl's residence. He strode purposefully through his home, his presence commanding attention. The maids, startled by his sudden appearance, paused in their work. He moved with an air of barely contained intensity. "Good day, Your Grace," they greeted nervously. "The Earl and Miss Carriston are enjoying afternoon tea in the garden. I'll escort you there, Your Grace." The maid, looking apprehensive, led the way slowly. "Oh dear, why has the Duke come?" She fretted inwardly. After a short walk, she announced, "Your Grace, we've arrived at Miss Carriston's area." Charles gave a non-committal hum in response, then overheard Eli's voice. "It's true I have more free time, and I understand music and singing, but keeping Natalie company." Charles paused just outside the garden, unintentionally eavesdropping on their conversation. Seeing Eli's troubled expression, Earl Carriston inquired, "Young man, is something troubling you?" "It's a shame, as Natalie has always enjoyed your company." Charles felt a prickle of displeasure and jealousy at the Earl's words. "Always enjoyed your company." The phrase echoed in his mind. Eli, surprised, quickly denied it. "Excuse me, Earl Carriston, I don't understand what you mean by Natalie always enjoying my company." The Earl glanced at Natalie, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "Precisely what I said." Natalie rushed to clarify. "It's nothing, just as he said. I do enjoy Eli's company." Charles thought, so her affection for me was all an act. He turned to leave. Natalie, a blush rising on her cheeks, hastily explained, "Because I've always wanted to learn more about Duke Ben Knox through you." Charles stopped in his tracks. She continued earnestly, "I want to understand the Duke, but I'm too intimidated to approach him directly. Spending time with you is the best way to learn about him. I truly apologize if this has caused you any inconvenience. You can disregard my request if it's too much trouble." Eli's eyes lit up. "So that's it," he exclaimed enthusiastically. "Our entire family hopes Miss Carriston and my uncle will end up together. How could I find this troublesome?" "Not at all. I am delighted." Natalie offered him a soft, "Thank you." Earl Carriston, however, was confused. "It seems Natalie has completely misunderstood my intentions. I'll need to find a better opportunity to speak with her." Charles, having overheard her explanation, felt a surge of triumph. As expected, she never forgets to maintain the charade of being enamored with me. Eli, brimming with excitement, asked, "By the way, Miss Carriston, isn't this a perfect opportunity? You can ask me anything you want to know about my uncle. I promise to tell you everything." Natalie lowered her head slightly, thoughtfully stroking her chin. "Since you've offered, Eli," she said, "I won't hold back. I've always wondered, has the Duke ever been fond of anyone? What kind of person was she?" "Ili posit, kothering." "It's hard to say, but it seems my uncle did have someone he cared for once." Natalie's heart skipped a beat. She had asked casually, never expecting an affirmative answer, let alone that the Duke still held this person in his heart. It was difficult to imagine what kind of person could capture the Duke's attention for so long. A melancholic shadow fell over her features. Eli, attempting to explain and subtly change the subject, offered a vague hint. "Actually, I don't know much about her, only that she and my uncle have known each other for a long time." Suddenly, Charles strolled into the garden, his voice calm but laced with amusement. "I didn't realize I was the topic of your afternoon tea." Natalie's mouth opened in a silent gasp. "Uncle, Ili Ixtlimeth." Everyone rose to their feet, bowing respectfully to Duke Ben Knox. "There's no need for formalities," he said smoothly. "Please be seated," Charles offered. Natalie, flustered, addressed the maid. "I'll prepare the tea. This is my favorite blend. I hope your grace enjoys it." The maid agreed, allowing Natalie to excuse herself. Charles turned to Eli, his voice laced with a warning. "If you spout any more nonsense, your allowance for next month will be forfeited entirely." Eli was stunned, hardly believing his ears. He protested, pleading with the Duke, "But I wasn't speaking nonsense." "Haven't you always been?" Charles cut him off sharply. "One more word, and it'll cost you 10 gold coins." The two continued their playful bickering. A short while later, Natalie returned, pouring tea for the Earl. As she did, Eli's words replayed in her mind. He hadn't denied it. If he truly has someone in his heart, my chances are even slimmer than I thought. Should I find an opportunity to give up? I hope Princess Arya won't kill me because of this misunderstanding. Her hand trembled slightly as she held the teapot. Charles sipped his tea, noticing Natalie's downcast expression. She sat down, her gaze distant and preoccupied. Charles observed her, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Why is she feigning ignorance now? She should be bothered by what Eli said. Charles placed his teacup on the table. "Excelente. Thank you for your hospitality, Earl." Startled by his voice, Natalie fumbled, the teapot slipping from her grasp and crashing to the ground. A chorus of concerned exclamations rippled through the air. Tea splashed onto Charles, the shattered porcelain scattering across the patio. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "Did you burn yourself?" "I'm fine," Natalie replied, her gaze fixed on his hand. Are you burned?" Meanwhile, in a secluded corner of a bustling tavern, Ryan met with Princess Fiona. "Why did you summon me here?" Fiona demanded, her voice sharp. "Have you concocted another brilliant scheme to ensnare Natalie?" It was clear they were discussing their ongoing plot against Natalie. "I haven't yet," Ryan admitted, "but you'll need to provide me with 100 gold coins first." He extended his hand expectantly. Fiona's eyes widened. "What? 100 gold coins? You're extorting me. Several patrons glanced their way, drawn by the rising volume of their argument. Fiona, mortified by the attention, covered her face with her hand. Didn't we agree, she hissed, that you'd receive the Earl's fortune once you married Natalie? You haven't even managed to secure a betrothal, and you dare demand this much money? Ryan remained impassive. Unfortunately, thanks to your plans, I've wasted considerable time in the capital and depleted my funds. Fiona scoffed. You've likely gambled it all away. Besides, she argued, you haven't been helpful. We agreed I wouldn't pay you this much until we succeeded. Ryan's lips curled into a challenging smirk. Perhaps I should pay the Earl a visit and reveal our little scheme. He might reward me handsomely for exposing you and your venomous mother. Fiona's composure finally cracked. Are you threatening me? She shouted. Ryan chuckled, a triumphant glint in his eyes. Indeed, I am. What are you going to do about it? Fiona gritted her teeth, barely containing her fury. You damn you. She longed to tear his smug face apart, but she couldn't afford to alienate this penniless gambler. Who knew what desperate act he might commit? She slammed a heavy pouch onto the table. Here are 10 gold coins. It's all I have on me. I'll have the rest delivered later. Ryan's face broke into a greedy smile. Have it delivered today, he demanded. Don't make me wait. Fiona, flustered and helpless, could only nod. And from now on, he added, 100 gold coins every month until I marry that little harlot. He continued to exploit and threaten her, his demands escalating. Fiona sputtered. What? Is that not enough? Do you want even more? She quickly backtracked, her voice firm. No, I agree. 100 gold coins. I'll have it delivered every month. I won't go back on my word. Ryan dismissed her with a cold wave of his hand. See that you don't. Now get out. As Fiona stormed away, she seethed with resentment. That damned gambler. Back at the bar, Ryan ordered another drink, chuckling to himself. That fool is even easier to deceive than Natalie. Perhaps I should consider switching targets. After all, the Earl did say Fiona's dowry would be substantial. Meanwhile, back in the garden, Natalie hovered anxiously over Charles, examining his hand. It's nothing, he reassured her gently. This is hardly an injury. We should still apply some ointment, Natalie insisted. Burns can be quite painful. Let me see your hand. Eli, ever eager to lighten the mood, chimed in. Don't worry, Miss Cherished. My uncle grew up in army barracks. He's endured countless injuries and never once complained. He's a remarkably resilient man. Natalie's eyes welled up, touched by his words. If I remember correctly, she thought, in my past life, when I was at the Constance family estate, I constantly heard news of his near-death experiences on the battlefield. The entire Hetzel Empire envied his power and prestige at such a young age, calling him the chosen one, blessed by the gods. But they didn't know those glorious medals were earned with his life. I'd rather you didn't have those accolades, Natalie murmured softly. Everyone stared at her, surprised by her unexpected statement. Why would she say such a thing? Earl Cherished turned to her, asking, What did you say? Natalie stammered, flustered. I mean, if you didn't have those accolades and fame, you wouldn't have been injured. Charles froze, his mind flashing back to memories of past battles. Whenever I was injured, all I received was praise and encouragement. He remembered his childhood, his father clapping him on the shoulder, a comforting hand on his head. Charles, you were so brave. Such a strategic mind at such a young age. His entire family offered their encouragement, and young Charles had basked in their praise. Worthy of the Bennock's name, you will surely become the Empire's sharpest sword. Charles, you'll charm countless noble ladies. I'm already worried about how I'll choose a suitable match for you. You must maintain this bravery. But young Charles hadn't felt happy, only a growing unease. They spoke of a future built on a foundation of pain, a future he was expected to embrace. His gaze, however, held an unwavering resolve. I will continue, he'd vowed. And yet, he thought now, I could have said something else back then. He extended his hand. Natalie's voice, soft as a whisper, broke through his reverie. Let me tend to that for you. Their eyes met, a gentle understanding passing between them. Of course, she said, rising gracefully. I'll fetch the medical kit. 10 minutes later, Natalie dabbed at his hand with a damp cloth. Tell me if it hurts, she murmured, her touch feather-light. I'll try to be as gentle as possible. Earl Cherished, meanwhile, watched the scene unfold with a mixture of regret and dissatisfaction. I intended to encourage a match between Natalie and Eli, he fretted. How did things end up like this? He nudged his daughter, lowering his voice. Natalie, you... Charles's gaze snapped towards him, a silent warning in his eyes. Eli, oblivious to the tension, bounded over. "Uncle," he exclaimed. "You smile." Charles quickly composed his features. "You're mistaken." "I'm not mistaken, young master Eli," Natalie chimed in, a playful lilt in her voice. "I saw it too, quite clearly." Charles sighed inwardly. They caught him off guard, leaving him momentarily speechless, a blush creeping up his neck. Searching for a plausible excuse, he settled on a neutral response. "I finished my work for the day," he said calmly. "Surely I'm allowed to be pleased about that." Eli, however, wasn't easily dissuaded. "But how could you have finished?" he challenged. "I just came from your study, and there's still a mountain of paperwork." Charles shot Eli a warning glance. "Do you presume everyone works at your leisurely pace?" Eli blinked, momentarily stunned into silence. Natalie, observing the exchange, felt a warmth bloom in her chest. "So he's just like everyone else," she mused, happy to be finished with work early. The unexpected glimpse into his ordinary humanity made him seem all the more appealing. "All done," she announced, finishing with the bandage. "Remember to change the dressing regularly. Duke Bennox." Charles inclined his head in acknowledgement. Eli watched the two of them, the unspoken affection hanging heavy in the air. It's obvious that smile was for Miss Carriston, he realized. But Uncle is completely oblivious, surprisingly dense when it comes to matters of the heart. "It seems I'll have to take matters into my own hands." "If you'll excuse me," Charles announced, rising to his feet. Eli simply nodded, his mind already churning with plans. Fiona, meanwhile, stormed back into her home, a whirlwind of fury. She swept across the room, flinging vases and trinkets to the floor with reckless abandon. "I'm so furious," she shrieked. "While I'm being extorted by that scoundrel Ryan. Father is hosting a tea party for that little harlot and the Duke, along with Eli." Helena placed a calming hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Compose yourself, Fiona," she urged. "Don't let the Earl see you like this. It will only hinder our plans." Fiona continued to fume. "Mother, how much longer must I endure this wretched existence? I can't bear it." Helena soothed her daughter. "Don't worry, my dear. It won't be much longer. I've devised a much better plan." The scene shifted. A maid handed Natalie a book, her voice low. "This is everything they said." Natalie's brow furrowed. "But what exactly is their plan?" she pressed. The maid shook her head. "They didn't specify." "It doesn't matter," Natalie replied, a steely glint in her eyes. "This is enough." Natalie leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Spread the word of Ryan and Fiona's meeting at the tavern. Make sure the entire capital knows of their rendezvous, including my father." The maid hesitated. "But Miss Shabera is so foolish. Why not simply tell the Earl of their scheming directly?" "Princess Natalie wants Fiona to marry Ryan," Natalie explained, a chilling smile playing on her lips. "I want them to slowly experience the same torment I endured in my past life." It was clear she was plotting her revenge against Fiona and her mother. That evening, during dinner, Earl Carriston addressed Fiona directly. "Word of your meetings with Ryan has spread throughout the capital," he announced, his voice grave. "I've already dispatched a letter to Count Constance's estate, urging him to discuss your marriage." Fiona and her mother exchanged shocked glances. How had her father learned of their clandestine meetings? "What?" Fiona sputtered, rising to her feet. "Father, you misunderstand. It's my sister who has feelings for Ryan, not I." Helena quickly corroborated her daughter's story. "Indeed," she insisted. "Ryan sought Fiona out merely to ask her advice on how to court Natalie. Recall the letter immediately. Don't let Count Constance misunderstand the situation." Natalie feigned concern. "Sister, are you still upset about what happened before?" "Don't be. Lately, I've only been seeing Duke Bennox and Eli. I haven't seen Ryan at all." Fiona, pushed to the brink, exploded. You damned wretch. How dare you flaunt it in my face? Just you wait. I'll crush you under my heel one day." Natalie turned to her father. "By the way, father, didn't you ask Ryan? What was his explanation?" The Earl recounted the conversation. "He didn't offer an explanation. He just kept apologizing, saying you shouldn't have met with Fiona privately and damaged her reputation." Fiona and her mother froze, a wave of apprehension washing over them. They were beginning to understand Ryan's true nature. How could this be? Damn it. Could it be that damned gambler realized Natalie was too difficult to manipulate, so he shifted his target to Fiona? Helena sat down calmly, though her inner turmoil raged. Observing Helena's reaction and expression, Natalie thought, Ryan truly hasn't disappointed me. For money, he immediately betrayed our previous plan, saving me the trouble of persuading father. Fiona tugged at her mother's sleeve, pleading, but Helena's expression remained resolute. Facing Natalie and her father, she absolutely could not allow Fiona to marry Ryan. It would ruin her daughter's life. But the rumors had already spread throughout the capital. Without a valid reason, the Earl wouldn't retract his letter. The best course of action now was to stall for time, to solidify the matter between Ryan and Natalie as quickly as possible. Forcing a smile, she attempted to persuade the Earl. Darling, if you've already decided on Fiona's marriage, I won't object. But Fiona hasn't been feeling well lately. You should write another letter, asking Count Constance to postpone the marriage discussions and give Fiona more time to prepare. Fiona whispered, Mother, what are you saying? My health. Helena shot her daughter a warning glance, a silent signal passing between them. Fiona suddenly understood her mother's intentions. Feigning a headache and near faint, she gasped, Oh, that's right. I've been feeling dizzy lately. I hope Father will give me a few more days. The Earl readily agreed. It shall be as you say. As for Fiona's illness, I'll summon a physician immediately to examine her. Thank you, darling, Helena said, relieved. Natalie, observing their actions carefully, thought, trying to stall for time? Fine. I want to see what other tricks you have up your sleeves. The next day, Natalie went to the kitchen early. She noticed the wound on her hand had almost completely healed. She had been meticulously cared for at the Duke's mansion these past few days. I'll bake some pastries to express my gratitude, she thought. Linda, Charles's maid, led him into the kitchen. She was surprised. Your Grace, why are you here so early? He felt a twinge of embarrassment, recalling the mountain of paperwork that had kept him busy all night, leaving him no time to rest. He remembered thinking the day was busy enough, and it seems tonight will be another late one. But he concealed his true reason. It's nothing. I was passing by on some business, so I thought I'd stop by. Natalie beamed. Since you're here, why not help me make pastries? Charles hesitated. Fiona entered the kitchen. Sister, she said, really? How can you drag such a distinguished person as the Duke into the kitchen? Natalie replied, So, according to you, what should I do? Fiona moved closer to Charles, lowering her voice. Why don't I make tea with the Duke, while you and Bella bake cakes for him to enjoy? Charles, disapproving, brushed her hand off his shoulder. Go away. No, thank you. Fiona, startled and embarrassed, watched as he turned to Natalie. I find baking rather interesting, he said, and I've never tried it before. Natalie was surprised. You really want to try? I was just saying that casually. He adjusted Natalie's apron. If Miss Fiona doesn't like the kitchen, then please leave. You're not welcome here. She hadn't expected him to be so forward. Fiona panicked. Your Grace, that's not what I meant. Charles led Natalie further into the kitchen. Come on, tell me what to do first. She replied, Let's prepare the cream first. She glanced back at Fiona's enraged expression. This is even better, she thought. I won without lifting a finger. Fiona must be furious. Fiona glared resentfully at Natalie, watching her and the Duke work together intimately. Ignoring Fiona, she snapped at Bella. Move aside. Bella simply watched, suppressing a smile. Time's up. Let's see how our collaboration turned out. Natalie excitedly opened the oven. The cake emitted an enticing aroma. It appeared to be a success. She offered a piece to the Duke. This is all thanks to your Grace's help, so please have the first bite. He was surprised, hesitant. A childhood memory flickered in Charles's mind. His younger sister had urged him. Brother, she'd said, Mother says when you're sad, eating cake will make you feel better. Here, this one is very sweet. He had coldly turned to leave, but she had grabbed his hand, coaxing him, pushing the cake into his mouth. He had been deeply uncomfortable then, and even now, the memory tugged at him. Charles shook his head, pulling himself back to the present. He abruptly refused Natalie's offering. I don't like sweets. Natalie's face fell at Charles's rejection, a look of disappointment clouding her features. You don't like sweets? How strange. What Duke Ben Knox just said sounds so familiar. After my mother passed away, I couldn't control my grief, but I didn't want my father to see me upset, so I could only visit her grave in secret. One cold, snowy night, I carefully brought 2 pieces of cake to my mother's grave and showed them to her. Mother, I finally learned how to make this dessert. It tastes exactly like the ones you used to make for me. As long as I eat this, I feel like you're still with me, and then I won't cry anymore. That day, I happened to meet him, a young boy with a sorrowful expression. I stared at him blankly. That older brother looks so strange. I didn't see him cry, but why does he seem like he's crying? I stood there silently for a long time and noticed that the woman on the tombstone in front of him shared a striking resemblance to him. Had his mother also become an angel? The pain of losing a loved one, just like me, made me want to approach him. So I ran over and, without a word, stuffed a piece of cake into his mouth to comfort him. I forced him to eat the sweet. My actions seemed to frighten him. He only came back to his senses after a while, swallowed the entire cake in one gulp, and then looked at me with wary eyes. "What are you doing?" "I don't like sweets." I pointed at him innocently. "It's wrong to lie. You clearly swallowed it, yet you say you don't like it." Faced with my righteous words, he could only awkwardly look away. He didn't admit it, very stubborn, but he didn't deny it either. For a whole year after that, we often met at the cemetery, chatting and sharing desserts. We became each other's confidants, helping each other through that painful time. He gradually started to like the cakes I made. "It tastes good." I would pretend to be angry and reply, "I don't believe you. You just like to pretend." Until my stepmother appeared. I couldn't sneak to the cemetery anymore. Only then did I realize that we had never exchanged names. Once we lost contact, we would never find each other again. Back in the present, I only wish for one thing. If I could see him again, I really want to see if he's still as stubborn as before. Suddenly, she addressed Charles. "Hey." He was starting to feel uneasy. Why did she suddenly sigh? Was it because of what he had said earlier? Charles quickly explained, wanting to reassure her. "Although I don't like to eat them, these pastries look quite good." Natalie smiled. "That's wonderful. Then please take them back for Duke Benox and your family. I'll prepare a thank you gift separately later." He took the cake box and nodded. "All right, I'll take them. I have some matters to attend to, so I'll be going now." Just as Charles turned to leave, Natalie suddenly called out, "Wait." He turned back, curious. Natalie approached him and said, "You have some flour on your nose. Let me wipe it off for you. If you don't answer, I'll take that as a yes." Bella watched from afar, silently cheering her on. "Miss, go for it." And so, Natalie gently brushed the flour from his face. They looked so intimate. Charles's heart pounded in his chest. He quickly said, "All right, it's fine now. I'll be going. Goodbye." Natalie promptly curtsied. "Goodbye, Your Grace." Charles walked slowly down the hallway, murmuring to himself, "This looks like it was made by that girl. What a pity." He stood there for a long moment, lost in thought. Behind the curtains, a maid silently observed his every move. Then she hurried back to report to Natalie's stepmother, Helena. After listening to Hannah's entire account, Helena asked, "So, you believe Duke Benox's dislike of sweets is likely connected to a woman?" Hannah nodded firmly. "Yes, madam. Now you and Miss Fiona can rest assured. Even if Duke Benox does end up marrying the eldest daughter, he won't love her." Fiona protested vehemently. "What nonsense are you talking about? He's the most eligible bachelor in the Empire. For Natalie to marry him, even if it's just for show, would be an immense honor. I absolutely will not let that happen." The woman beside her, Helena, soothed her daughter. "Don't worry, Fiona. This could be an opportunity for us." Fiona, intrigued, questioned, "What do you mean?" Helena's lips curved into a sly smile. "I want to know who this woman Duke Benox holds in his heart is. She might become our most powerful weapon against Natalie." 2 days later, Charles and Natalie strolled together in the mansion's courtyard. As they walked, Charles said, "My father thoroughly enjoyed the pastries you made. He asked me to thank you." Natalie replied softly, "You're welcome. It was my pleasure." A silence fell between them. Natalie closed her eyes, a worried thought flitting through her mind. His injury is almost healed. This might be his last visit to the mansion. I need to find a reason to continue seeing him. She stammered, Before she could finish, a servant came running with urgent news. "Your Grace, the king has issued an emergency summons. There's a heretical rebellion in Roger County, and you are required to lead the troops to suppress it." Charles responded calmly, "I understand." With that, he followed the servant and departed. Natalie stood there, a look of concern on her face, fearing her plans might unravel. After taking a few steps, Charles suddenly stopped. He turned back and said gently to Natalie, "I'm going." Natalie was momentarily taken aback, then offered a shy smile. "Safe travels. Return quickly." After Charles left, Natalie thought to herself, were his words just now a way of informing me? It seems my efforts these past few days haven't been entirely in vain. Now, I should make time to meet the chef grandfather recently brought. I deliberately had her observe me making pastries today. I wonder if she noticed anything unusual. Lost in thought, she was startled by her father rushing towards her, urgently calling her name. "Natalie!" She asked curiously, "Father, what's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry?" Her father gripped her arm and announced gravely, "His Majesty has summoned you to the palace immediately. I'm worried Princess Arya might give you a hard time." Upon receiving the news, Natalie and her father hurried to the royal palace. "Please follow me," a servant instructed. They trailed slowly behind him. As they walked, Natalie worried, "I rarely have the opportunity to see His Majesty. This sudden summons must be Princess Arya's doing. But even knowing that, my father and I have no right to refuse. We can only obey." Out of concern, father requested to accompany me to the audience, and His Majesty readily agreed. This put me somewhat at ease. Reaching the entrance to the main hall, two servants greeted them. "Please enter." The doors slowly closed, and everyone's expression became unusually tense. Natalie felt a growing unease. However, that small measure of comfort quickly dissipated. Seeing them, the Emperor spoke sternly, "Earl Cariston, you have arrived." Natalie and her father hastily bowed. "Your Majesty, may the glory of the goddess of light be with you." The Emperor replied, "There's no need for formalities." He then turned to Natalie and asked, "I hear you've enjoyed reading since childhood and are proficient in multiple languages?" She responded modestly, "Your Majesty flatters me. I only have a rudimentary understanding." Natalie continued to worry. What did Princess Arya tell His Majesty? What does she mean by suddenly bringing this up in front of him? The Emperor produced a stack of documents and presented Natalie with a challenge. A rudimentary understanding? Then take a look at this. These are documents recently gathered by the Intelligence Department. I expect you to translate them within 3 days. The Emperor's words struck Natalie and her father like a bolt from the blue. The Intelligence Department? This was no simple document. Hoping to extricate his daughter from this predicament, Natalie's father spoke up on her behalf. "Your Majesty, Natalie is merely self-taught in a few languages. I'm afraid she's not capable of undertaking such a crucial responsibility. To avoid delaying matters of state, I hope you will select someone else." The Emperor chuckled softly, refusing his request. "Giving up before even trying? Earl Cariston, are you reluctant to let your daughter contribute to the nation? Or are you worried I'm deliberately making things difficult for her?" Seeing the Emperor's misunderstanding, Earl Cariston hastily explained, "How could your Majesty deliberately make things difficult for a young girl? That doesn't align with your reputation for benevolence and magnanimity." Natalie stood by, speculating. Father is subtly reminding His Majesty that, regardless of the reason, giving me such a difficult task would damage the royal family's prestige. No matter what Natalie's father said, the Emperor stood firm in his decision. "All right, I understand your point. I can assure you that even if Natalie fails to translate it within 3 days, she won't face any punishment. Are you satisfied now?" A tense silence filled the room. The Emperor clearly understood this and immediately addressed our concerns. Although I still felt something was amiss, I couldn't find any excuse to refuse. Knowing she had no way out, Natalie could only accept her fate with a smile. "Thank you for your trust, Your Majesty. I will do my best to translate this document." Her father carefully accepted the stack of papers, assuring the Emperor, "I will personally supervise Natalie." The Emperor nodded. "Good. You may leave now and begin your work." After they left, the Emperor called out, "All right, you can come out now. Arya." Princess Arya, who had been hiding nearby, emerged with a radiant smile. "Father." The Emperor turned to his daughter and asked, "Are you happy now?" Arya didn't answer, merely standing there with a satisfied smile. "Thank you for granting my request, Father. You're the best." The Emperor voiced the question in his mind. "But haven't you always been fond of that Bennox boy?" The Earl's daughter, Natalie, has been frequently interacting with him recently. "Aren't you angry? Why did you recommend her to me?" Arya clung to her father's arm, acting coquettishly. "I wanted to help you, Father. You've been troubled by that document for a long time. Besides, I also wanted to see how capable Miss Natalie truly is. If she's genuinely talented, I might consider letting Charles go to her." Hearing this, the Emperor felt somewhat reassured. Arya has grown up. She replied shyly, "Thank you for your praise, Father. I'm also looking forward to Miss Natalie's performance." On the surface, Arya appeared understanding and considerate, but deep down, she was filled with cunning and calculation. After all, this document was a special gift she had meticulously prepared. After returning home from the palace, Natalie sat seriously at her desk with a thick stack of documents. "I've been studying this document for hours, and aside from recognizing that it's a handwritten letter related to religion, I can't understand anything else," Natalie cried out in despair, holding her head in her hands. A few seconds later, she pulled herself together and put the documents away in a cupboard. There's still time. I'll set it aside for now and wait until I can find a reference book at the book market. She carefully locked the cupboard, then turned and called out, "Bella!" Bella appeared immediately. "Miss, what are your orders?" Natalie instructed, "Call Chef Judy here. I have something to ask her." A short while later, Judy arrived in Natalie's room and asked earnestly, "Miss Natalie, you called me here to ask about the pastries from the other day, correct?" Natalie replied calmly, "I deliberately gave the other chefs the day off so you could observe. Did you notice anything unusual?" She recounted in detail everything she had witnessed that day. There was nothing unusual about the others, but Chef Hannah eavesdropped on your conversation with Duke Bennox and then hurried off to Countess Helena's room. Natalie asked curiously, "Do you know what she reported?" Judy hesitated. "I'm not entirely sure. We're not permitted to enter Madam's room." Natalie found this increasingly strange. Duke Bennox and I didn't discuss anything of importance that day. Why would she rush to report it? Suddenly, Natalie stood up, startling Judy. "Miss, are you planning to dismiss Hannah? Shall I take some people to apprehend her?" She turned and said, "No, I need to speak with my stepmother first. I need her to tell me what Hannah reported that day." At the edge of the forest, Charles's warhorse galloped along the road. Suddenly, someone caught up to him, shouting, "Your Grace!" Charles glanced at the man and said, "What is it?" "Report." The man reported, "I've received news that immediately after you left Earl Carriston's estate, His Majesty summoned Miss Natalie to the palace." Charles froze, seemingly unable to comprehend what had happened. A few seconds later, he regained his composure, abruptly pulled the reins, halting his horse, and then turned to instruct the others. "You continue on. I'll return to the capital and catch up shortly." His subordinate anxiously reminded him, "Your Grace, although this won't delay our journey to Roger County, returning now might lead His Majesty to believe you are disloyal. Are you certain you want to go back?" Despite his subordinate's dissuasion, Charles resolutely replied, "I underestimated his ruthlessness before, which resulted in many innocent people being implicated. Because of me now, no matter what, I must prevent this from happening again, whether the target is Natalie or any other young lady." Faced with Charles's stubbornness, the man continued to worry for his safety. Just then, a pigeon suddenly arrived. The subordinate reported, "Your Grace, please wait. There's new information from the capital." Charles immediately urged, "Open it and see." He removed the letter from the pigeon's leg and, after reading its contents, said, "No need to return to the capital." Hearing this, Charles became even more alarmed. What? His face paled. No need to return? Could it be? He recalled Natalie's parting words, "Return safely." Countless negative thoughts flooded Charles's mind. "It can't be." His subordinate said, "Your Grace, look, the men I left in the capital saw Miss Natalie and Earl Carriston leave the palace safe and sound." Charles carefully read every word of the letter, and after confirming Natalie's safety, he breathed a sigh of relief. Since she has already left the palace, she should be safe for now. But this is only temporary. I must complete my mission and return as soon as possible. Charles set off immediately, firmly stating, "Continue onward. We must reach Roger County before sunrise tomorrow." A lively tea party was being held at the Carriston estate, with socialites gathering to celebrate. Natalie's stepmother leisurely sipped her tea. "I had intended to use this opportunity to inquire about Duke Bennox's preferences, but no one seems to know. He hides his feelings well." Suddenly, Natalie rushed over, her expression panicked, calling out, "Mother!" Helena turned around in surprise. "Natalie!" The other ladies present were also curious about her appearance. "Who is this?" Natalie quickly adjusted her skirt and gracefully introduced herself. "Natalie Carriston. It's a pleasure to meet you all, ladies." The ladies present smiled delightedly, showering her with compliments. "So it's Earl Carriston's eldest daughter. We haven't seen her before. She's unexpectedly beautiful. Her demeanor is so elegant and refined, a true model of a lady." Seeing Natalie being praised so highly, jealousy filled Helena's heart. This annoying girl, wasn't she quite disobedient before? She never attended these tea parties. Why has she suddenly come today? And she's dressed so elaborately. Is she deliberately trying to steal my thunder? She forced a smile and asked Natalie, "Don't you detest these sorts of gatherings? Why are you here so suddenly?" Natalie replied instantly, "I don't actually dislike them. It's just that Mother hasn't been well, and I couldn't leave her side. I had to stay home and care for her." but now that she's recovered, I can get out and about. Faced with Natalie's reasonable answer, Helena could only respond awkwardly. Yes, I was often ill before. You've worked hard. Natalie continued to play the role of the dutiful daughter, speaking to her venomous stepmother. It wasn't hard work. Caring for you is my duty, and I believe that if I encounter any unpleasantness, you will certainly stand up for me. In front of so many people, Helena could only feign concern for Natalie. So, you're saying you've encountered something unpleasant? Don't worry. With me here, no one dares to bully you. A sense of foreboding washed over Helena. I have a feeling this girl is up to no good. But in front of so many people, she had to maintain her image as a caring stepmother. Suddenly, Natalie grasped her hand, her eyes brimming with tears. It's Chef Hannah. I asked her to make an apple pie, and she actually used rotten apples. I even bit into a worm. Helena exclaimed in surprise. Such a thing happened? The surrounding ladies began to whisper amongst themselves. Heavens, how terrible. Poor Natalie, bullied by the chef again. Lady Helena must deal with that chef properly. Otherwise, how will she manage the Earl's estate in the future? Backed into a corner, Helena could only feign sympathy for Natalie. Don't worry, Natalie. After the tea party, I'll dismiss Hannah immediately and make her pay for her foolish actions. Inwardly, Helena was convinced Natalie was fabricating the story. Hannah would never do something so stupid without my permission. This hateful girl is lying. I'll deal with her slowly after the guests have left. Natalie, ever shrewd, cried and pleaded with her stepmother. Mother, please order Hannah's dismissal now. I truly can't bear it any longer. This was all part of Natalie's plan. How can I let her delay until the tea party ends? Only if everyone sees her being dismissed will they truly believe it. The other ladies began to voice their opinions. I agree with Miss Natalie's suggestion. This chef should be dismissed from the Earl's estate immediately, and her wages should be docked as punishment to teach her a lesson. Yes, yes, yes. Seeing everyone agreeing with Natalie, Helena's lips twitched. She desperately wanted to scold Natalie, but to maintain her image, she had to reluctantly agree. All right, I'll listen to Natalie. I'll have someone dismiss Hannah immediately. Natalie grasped Helena's hand in gratitude. Wonderful, thank you, Mother. Outside the estate, Hannah packed her belongings and left with tears of resentment in her eyes. As she walked, she thought, why did Madame suddenly dismiss me? I did everything she told me to. Suddenly, someone called out to her, startling her. Hannah, wait. Seeing Natalie, she felt a pang of guilt and immediately asked, Miss, is there something I can do for you? Natalie smiled. Following someone like my stepmother will never lead to anything good. She looked at Hannah. See how easily she dismissed you, Hannah? Although Hannah was deeply worried, she feigned ignorance. I don't understand what you're saying. Seeing this, Natalie could only shake her head in disappointment. Still unwilling to admit it? What a pity. I know your family is struggling. I had intended, if you confessed your wrongdoing and made amends, to recommend you as a chef at my grandmother's estate. Hannah was stunned. Recommend me as a chef at Marquis Elliot's estate? Are you serious? Natalie replied confidently, of course. Hannah hesitated for a moment, then earnestly confessed, I did accept Lady Helena's bribe and did some things that were disloyal to you and the Earl. I can tell you whatever truth you want to know. Natalie smiled with satisfaction, seeing everything proceeding smoothly. Excellent. First, I want to know, on the day Duke Ben Knox came to help me bake the cake, what did you report to my stepmother? With everything resolved, Bella praised Natalie's ingenuity. Miss, you are truly brilliant. Not only did you make Madame personally dismiss Hannah, but you also effortlessly got Hannah to tell you everything. Everything you wanted to know. Natalie was still pondering. I asked, and I got my answer. But she recalled her conversation with Hannah. Actually, there wasn't anything to report about your conversation with Duke Ben Knox in the kitchen that day. However, as he was leaving, he muttered to himself about the pastries you made. They looked just like the ones she used to make. Such a pity. Bella, standing beside her, was equally anxious. A pity about what? Natalie shook her head. I don't know. He didn't say anything else after that. But I'm certain that the girl he mentioned must be the one young Eli spoke of, the girl Duke Ben Knox has always held in his heart. And after hearing this, my stepmother is preparing to find that girl to use against me. Bella immediately understood Natalie's meaning. So you want to find that girl first? Natalie smiled. Yes, I'm considering it. After all, know your enemy and know yourself, and you need not fear the result of 100 battles. However, the priority now is to decipher the document His Majesty gave me. Let's go to the book market first. As for the matter of Duke Ben Knox, I'll ask young Eli about it when I have time. Bella quickly replied, yes, Mississippi. For the the next 2 days, Natalie visited every bookshop, large and small. Bella and I scoured the entire book market, but we didn't find the reference books I needed. Instead, I ran into Eli. Seeing her, he exclaimed, "Miss Natalie, I didn't expect to see you here. Are you still looking for books related to military matters?" She smiled sheepishly. "Yes, just browsing." She thought, it's best that as few people as possible know about deciphering the document for His Majesty. After all, it's classified information. They walked out together, chatting as they went. Natalie asked curiously, "So, young Eli, why are you here?" He sighed. "I'm looking for books related to musical theater, but I'm not familiar with this place, so I haven't made any progress." Natalie began to contemplate something. "Really? Then let's make a deal." Eli was taken aback, not yet understanding what was happening. He looked around in confusion. "A deal? What kind of deal?" Natalie gave a playful smile. "I'm very familiar with this book market. I can help you find the books you're looking for. In exchange, you must tell me about the girl Duke Bennox has always held in his heart." Eli was stunned by this unexpected proposal. After a moment, he replied sadly, "I'm truly sorry. Regarding that girl, I only know that my uncle once knew her. Because of her, my uncle hates all sweets. As for anything else, I know nothing." Natalie felt a pang of disappointment. "Is that so? It seems Duke Bennox truly cherishes that girl. Even his family can't know anything about her." Suddenly, Eli offered an encouraging smile. "However, Miss Natalie, don't be sad. Our whole family supports you. And that girl in my uncle's heart has never appeared, and she certainly won't appear in the future." Natalie responded softly, grateful for his comfort. "No matter what, I won't give up on Duke Bennox." She thought, "I have no way out now anyway. My only choice is to win him over." Having said this, Natalie quickly recovered her cheerful mood and said to Eli, "Come on, young master. Although the deal didn't work out, to thank you for your comfort, I can still help you find the books you're looking for." Eli followed behind Natalie. "Wonderful. Lead the way." With my help, young Eli quickly found the books he was looking for. And I, by chance, happened upon a new clue about deciphering that letter. St. Paul's Cathedral in the Roger District, once a pilgrimage site for the Church of Light, had the best choir on the continent. Those children learned a special script. People said that singing in this script could better purify the soul. However, a great fire decades ago burned down St. Paul's Cathedral, and now only desolate ruins remain. After receiving this news, I immediately returned to ask my father's permission, then took several guards from my mother's family and rushed to the Roger District. Under the cover of darkness, if I ride at full speed, I might be able to visit the person on duty there before daybreak. The next morning, at the Roger District military camp, Charles repeatedly thanked everyone for their hard work over the past 2 days. The small rebel force hiding in Roger has been completely wiped out. However, the investigators have received reliable intelligence that the remaining core group of rebels is preparing to hold their final gathering here, after which they will scatter and flee. Therefore, we must set off immediately and capture them all before their meeting ends. Seeing his poor complexion, everyone stood up with concern and asked, "Your Grace, you haven't rested for several days. Why not leave this matter to us? Rest assured, we guarantee we'll complete the mission and not delay your return to Miss Natalie." Charles glared at them. The two men smiled awkwardly and stammered, Your Grace, we absolutely won't let any of them escape." Charles sighed. "Enough nonsense." He then turned majestically and ordered, "Everyone move out." Just as he stepped out of the cabin, Charles was surprised to find Miss Natalie standing there. She looked incredibly elegant. "Your Grace, I finally found you." Greeting him at a time like this is a perfect opportunity to leave a good impression. How could I miss it? Seeing her, Charles asked with concern, "Natalie, what are you doing here?" Natalie rushed forward and embraced him, looking directly into his eyes and saying sweetly, "It's so good to see you safe and sound." Her joy was short-lived as she sadly confided in Charles, "Duke Bennox, please forgive my previous negligence. Last night, I dreamt that you were injured. I woke up very worried, so I came looking for you without thinking. Now that I see you're all right, I'm finally at ease." Charles froze, standing there dumbfounded. Because of a dream? The subordinates standing behind him whispered about Natalie. "This young lady is both beautiful and affectionate. I hope she can win His Grace's heart. Don't you think His Grace's attitude towards her isn't as cold as usual? If it were anyone else, they would have been pushed away by now." These words reached Charles's ears, and he immediately glared at them with a murderous look. Seeing this, they could only smile awkwardly to ease the tension. Your Grace, we'll go capture those rebels now. We guarantee we'll complete the mission. They urged each other, let's go, let's go. Charles suddenly recalled what they had just said. If it were anyone else, they would have been pushed away by now. Charles's hand suddenly reached out, lightly touching Natalie's shoulder as if to push her away, but for some reason, he stopped. Then, he said to her seriously, urgent mission. I have to go. Natalie replied shyly, I'm sorry. Go ahead with your mission. I'll wait for you here. Charles became unusually silent, saying nothing as he turned and left. Seeing this, Natalie took the initiative to bid him farewell. Please be careful. I'll be praying for you, waiting for your safe return. Charles still chose silence, but this time, he secretly smiled. Natalie couldn't help but feel a little nervous. I did pretty well just now, right? At least this time, he didn't criticize my acting. Or maybe he's just too tired to bother with me, as he looks like he hasn't slept in 2 days. Either way, he's incredibly dedicated to his work. After Charles left, Natalie turned to her own subordinates and said, let's go to the ruins of St. Paul's Cathedral. One of them asked in confusion, Miss, didn't you say you were going to wait here for His Grace to return? Natalie said calmly, there's no rush to wait for him. I'll wait after I finish my business. Actually, I've already thought it through. Duke Bennox is busy with official duties and has no time to accompany me, so I'll increase his favorable impression of me and then secretly go to the cathedral ruins to investigate the document. 2 birds with 1 stone. That night, in a desolate, deserted area, stood an ancient-looking, moss-covered building. Natalie thought, this must be the ruins of the cathedral. Although burned to this state, one could still vaguely make out its former glory. It was indeed worthy of being a famous landmark of the imperial capital. Holding an oil lamp, Natalie instructed her 2 subordinates, you 2 wait outside. I'll go in alone. As she walked, she thought, the fewer people who know the contents of the document, the better. They can guard outside and protect me at any time. This place has practically collapsed. Even if there are clues, they'll be hard to find. I can only go in and take a look. After only a few steps, Natalie made a discovery. Staring at the rubble before her, she murmured, this is... Taking a deep breath to bolster her courage, she cautiously stepped inside. This looks like a prayer room. Compared to other areas, it's relatively well preserved. Maybe there's something useful here. Natalie walked around the room, examining everything, and noticed something unusual. She hurried closer, wiping away the dust with her hand. This is a clue? Suddenly, a hand appeared out of nowhere, clamping over her mouth. Startled, Natalie dropped her lamp to the ground. The mysterious person whispered a warning in her ear. I know your guards are outside. Don't call them. I won't hurt you, otherwise. Natalie could only nod obediently. He slowly released his hand, and Natalie quickly backed away, keeping a safe distance. She thought, I didn't hear his footsteps at all. If he wanted to kill me, he wouldn't need to go through all this trouble. He could have just done it. So, what he said must be true. I'd better listen to him. Seeing Natalie's nervous expression, the mysterious person spoke to reassure her. Don't worry, I did that because I was afraid you would scream if you suddenly saw me. I don't want many people to see me like this. It would be troublesome. Natalie began to speculate silently. It seems his target isn't me, and he seems to be able to understand the writing here. This is a rare opportunity. Why not? Seizing the chance, Natalie asked him a few questions. Do you recognize these characters? I'm very interested in them. If you know them, I can pay you. He replied frankly, no need for payment. I can tell you. After all, I'm an old acquaintance. Hearing this, Natalie was even more shocked. What? An old acquaintance? The mysterious person began to remove his hood, turning to face Natalie. Natalie's eyes widened in astonishment. She still couldn't believe what was happening before her. It's you? Why is it you? More than 10 years ago, on a snowy day, the pitiful cries of a little girl echoed from a moving carriage. Mama! It was Natalie, nestled in her father's arms, sobbing because she missed her mother. Earl Carriston tried to comfort his daughter. Natalie, Mama hasn't completely left us. She's watching over us from heaven. So, if you keep crying, Mama will be heartbroken. Natalie innocently asked, really? Seeing that she had stopped crying, Carlyle was overjoyed and said to his daughter, when has Papa ever lied to you? Then I won't cry. I can't make Mama sad. Natalie quickly wiped away her tears. Suddenly, she saw something outside, a lone male figure sitting there. Seeing this, Natalie called out to the coachman, asking him to stop. As soon as the carriage stopped, little Natalie ran towards the white-haired man, softly greeting him. The man looked up, surprised at the source of the voice. He saw a little girl, tears still clinging to the corners of her eyes, speaking to him. "Sir, my mother used to love giving gifts to others, but now she's gone. Can I give you a gift in her place? It's just a small token of appreciation. Please accept it," little Natalie said, holding out a few silver coins. The silver-haired young man seemed a little flustered by the situation. Then he stood up, sincerely thanking Natalie, and reached out to take the coins, saying something in return. Now, the face before Natalie perfectly matched the one in her memory, the same handsome smile as before. But what was strange was that after so many years, his appearance hadn't aged at all. He still looked so young. This filled Natalie with suspicion. The doubt on her face was so obvious that the silver-haired man asked, "You're wondering why I haven't aged, aren't you?" Natalie was astonished. How could this man be as perceptive as Duke Bennox, instantly seeing through her thoughts? The man explained, "It's nothing strange. As the most devout believer of the goddess of light, my lifespan is naturally longer than ordinary people. But you," Natalie asked, puzzled, "what about me?" He leaned closer to Natalie. "You have been reborn, haven't you?" The man asked directly. Seeing Natalie's expression, he became even more excited. It seemed he had guessed correctly. "I can't believe it's actually true. I never thought the legendary heart of the goddess of light fragment truly existed." Natalie was completely confused. What was he talking about? She suddenly remembered that he had blessed her once, saying, "In return, the goddess of light grants you protection and good luck." Could it be that thing that caused her rebirth? Natalie realized with astonishment that it was very likely the small stone she had always carried with her, the one she found so beautiful. The silver-haired young man hurriedly confirmed Natalie's guess. "That's it. Tell me quickly, after you were reborn, did you feel anything special? Where is the fragment?" Natalie replied, "Actually, I didn't feel anything special, and the fragment is gone. I don't know where it went." He hadn't expected the stone to be missing, but guessed it had likely merged with Natalie's body. He decided to stay by her side for the time being to observe her more closely. This greatly troubled Natalie. Her situation was already complicated enough. If she kept it by her side, it would probably become even more difficult to handle. Noticing Natalie's attitude, the silver-haired man comforted her. "Don't be nervous. I don't want to attract anyone's attention. I'll stay somewhere you can't see me. Besides, you like these characters, and I can help you." Since he had said so, Natalie had no choice but to trouble him. She thought, "I'll agree for now. This isn't the time to refuse." On the contrary, the man was very enthusiastic and even began to decipher the inscriptions there for Natalie. The first two words mean praise. The ones after are love and beauty. Natalie thought, "When I came, I randomly copied down the contents of the document for easy comparison. Should I just show it to him? After all, His Majesty hasn't given me much time." So she decided to let him see the other characters. This was, of course, no problem for him. Taking Natalie's paper, he studied it for a moment and immediately recognized that this was content from the confidential document leaked from the royal palace. Learning that it was a leaked document, Natalie became even more flustered. Meanwhile, Charles had already led the other knights and captured the fleeing rebels. Someone reported to Charles that a leader had escaped using fire magic and was heading southeast. He didn't say much, just ordered a pursuit. Not long after, his subordinates returned to report to Charles that the rebels' footprints had disappeared near them. Ahead were the ruins of St. Paul's Cathedral, their former holy ground. He was likely hiding inside. So, Charles didn't hesitate. Even if he had to raze the cathedral ruins to the ground, he would capture the rebel. Back with Natalie, she stammered, asking again, "I didn't miss here, did I? You just said that the secret letter was leaked from the royal palace, right?" The silver-haired man confirmed, "Yes. Before coming here, I passed through the imperial capital and overheard news about a letter concerning the goddess of light being leaked from the royal palace. I've been trying to investigate any news related to the goddess of light, so I found a way to see the contents they were circulating. Although the words on this paper are jumbled, I can still recognize it. This is part of the content of that secret letter." Natalie hadn't realized that from the moment she received the secret letter, she had fallen into a trap. If the letter was leaked, His Majesty would suspect her first. If she hadn't encountered this man by chance and learned of this, tomorrow, when she returned to the imperial capital completely unaware, she would be charged with treason and sentenced to death, and it would even implicate the entire Cherished family. Natalie suspected that this was all orchestrated by Elia. She knew from the beginning that this wasn't just about deciphering a document. To set this trap, Elia didn't hesitate to betray the nation's interests. Natalie had truly underestimated her stubbornness and ruthlessness. Seeing Natalie frozen in shock, the silver-haired man hurriedly brought her back to her senses, asking, "Why has your face suddenly become so pale?" Just then, a sound came from outside. Natalie was certain that many people seemed to have arrived outside, so she urged the man to hide quickly. It would be troublesome if others saw him. But when she turned around, his figure was already gone. He had run away incredibly fast. Natalie also hurried out to check the situation. Unexpectedly, it was Duke Ben Knox, Charles. Seeing Natalie's guards, he wondered why they were here and asked where Natalie was. Immediately after, Natalie also walked out and greeted Charles. Seeing her inside the cathedral, he anxiously told her to come over quickly and not to stand there. Charles's reaction puzzled Natalie. Before she could react, a blade was pressed against her neck. It was the wanted criminal. He had taken her hostage, threatening her not to move. Charles was incredibly worried about Natalie. He urgently summoned a magic spell. At this moment, Charles was thoroughly enraged and demanded the rebel release Natalie. He told Charles to cut the crap. "Withdraw your magic immediately and let me leave here, or I'll die with her." Realizing the unfavorable situation, Charles gritted his teeth and agreed to make a deal with him. "I can let you go, but you must promise not to harm her when you leave," he said triumphantly. "Deal." Charles turned and ordered everyone to make way for him. The crowd quickly dispersed, opening a path for him. The rebel said to Natalie gleefully, "It seems he cares a lot about you. He's been chasing me for days, and now he's agreed to let me go." He held Natalie hostage and walked out leisurely without hesitation. Natalie was still terrified and didn't dare to move, only stealing glances at Charles. He was exhausted from pursuing the rebel. If his efforts were wasted here, he would be very unwilling, wouldn't he? Natalie thought, biting her lip. She suddenly stomped hard on the rebel's foot. The moment he cried out in pain, Natalie seized the opportunity and shoved him away. At that moment, Charles swiftly attacked him with magic. By the time Natalie turned around in shock, he had already collapsed. Charles immediately reached out, gently embraced Natalie, and asked tenderly, "Are you all right?"